logic.
The way they formatted it, it just sounds very.
Someone and give the perception that it's journalistic integrity and it's based in fact, when it's really like, no, that was like some BS that they pulled it out of nowhere.
那我们两个，我们
And it's show after show.
That's the thing is, we have institutions on both sides that actually do dedicate themselves to fact-based journalism. Like, I didn't have any taste for The Atlantic before this presidency,
Oh, I love The Atlantic.
and that's the thing is, they do hold themselves to a very high journalistic standard of no, we must represent everything.
Yeah, but
Actually-
they're still kind of very progressive, I would say.
directive.
Actually,
Which
they're
might
right-leaning.
get confused with left. Well, the articles I was reading on The Atlantic was very left, I think.
They're balanced.
Well,
They're,
the thing is that sometimes things just
But
They-
are gonna sound leftist because
That's
it's just gonna
if
say.
it's is it progressive or is it?
At this point, there is also a difference between the Republican base and the 30% of people that Donald Trump is never going to lose.
Yeah.
All of those people who would have voted for McCain or Romney in less turbulent times aren't all that likely to be able to make the same arguments to protect Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, McCain's policy making did have a tendency to be belligerent, but he also did everything based on, okay, we're going to pursue fact-finding information 1st. We're going to put together, make sure that we know what's going on before we make a decision. You can't
Yeah.
do that.
well, and part of it
You can't
too, like,
not do that.
part of this
Yeah.
White House's strategy was to literally take information intentionally to disseminate it to the media knowingly false to try to understand where leaks were coming from and to also understand and also so that they could perpetuate this fake news concept.
We've never actually had a president with personal style relationships that Donald Trump garners with Fox News, with
Right.
multiple kind of people where they send information or they prop up specific information because it needs to be. We had a tendency before, we're always going to have a certain number of authoritarian voters in this country. It's just every country on the planet, a lot of people think we need a king.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not
They
true,
want a
but
savior. It's this concept of saviorship, which is
Yeah, save
often
the US.
religiously based.
and the problem is, it used to be in politics that no matter what, we would never engage those people who are authoritarian voters because they hijack your party.
Yeah.
They
And the Tea Party is what started that whole process with the GOP.
And what do you mean by authoritarian voters?
So there are people, you can call somebody conservative, you can call somebody liberal, but at the end of the day, those are both democratic concepts. Those are both votership based, those are both representative based. Authoritarian voters actually want a president for life. Authoritarian voters don't mind things like the state having extra control. And it's been a forever thing. The Democrats courted the authoritarian voters in the 70s. We did it for a second,
So are you saying that Trump is in the office because of authoritarian voters?
probably.
So
That
if Trump
seems-
is Republican, are you equating authoritarian voters to the Republican Party?
No. As a matter, so number one, Donald Trump did not get elected on what we generally consider the Republican base. All of those people who routinely voted for McCain, Romney, Bush, yes, he had a large percentage of those people, but again, he pulled millions of voters in multiple markets who voted for Barack Obama.
True.
Because he secured the evangelical vote with the promise of reversing Roe v. Wade.
Absolutely. Authoritarians, conservatives actually should be the people to combat it.
Right?
Literally,
Ironic
that
as
is
hell.
what
Small
should
government.
be happening.
That is very ironic.
This is what should be going on, but at the same time, that's not what we're seeing. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. We see this. We know that all of these people who say, no, Trump can be president for life.
I've never heard that.
Oh,
He's
it's
pushing
common.
for it.
That's
He's
not
made
ever
so
going to
many
happen. I mean, that's a
statements.
joke. That's not to me. That's not even worth that's like whether or not Santa Claus exists. Like that would
Yeah.
never happen.
He is in position though to call the shots and change laws and do things that I don't know if it would go that far, but
Lots
he
of
could
people are asking
change,
the question of what if he doesn't get reelected and he refuses to leave?
or just like
It's
how.
not gonna happen.
That's-
That's
what
insane.
Can happen.
It can happen, but
in
there's
Germany.
a.
It
Okay,
happens
so
all over the world.
Do you know how he was like, "Can I pardon myself?" That's the same kind of thing. He could pardon himself.
But
He could.
I mean, there's so much disagreement though. There's so much conflict in the U.S. that's not going to happen. You need to have You need to have like a general basis, like a huge basis of the population that actually likes the president for that to even happen.
Yeah.
So
The chances are very, 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 very
Like
slim.
only
like,
10% of Germany pre-World War II belonged to the Nazi Party.
Right.
That's the thing. It could
This
turn
is
into a
not-
dictatorship.
This is not a far removed thing. We've got lots of metrics saying that Americans, generation after generation, are getting less enthusiastic about democracy.
That doesn't mean we're gonna fall into the.
But
new...
when the votership doesn't think it's important to maintain democratic values, things like authoritarian values do sneak in. And he's done it multiple places already, where he went against regulation that was voted on by the American public and decided, no, I'm not going to do that. And yes, every president has the power of executive decision making. It is something they are allowed. He's doing it more than Obama did, and it was his primary complaint about Obama, is that Obama used executive orders to do everything all the time, and because Trump actually doesn't have a definitive hold over his party, he can't do that. He can't get things done.
I think
the
it's an
regular
interesting
way.
theory, and I think it's something that would be interesting to consider. But I think that there's a lot of other possibilities too that are just as worthy, if not more, of consideration.
I think that's just over dramatization of the situation. I think
We're
that there
moving
is.
hundreds of children to a tent city in Texas.
Yeah, but that has been happening for a lot longer than.
No.
And
amazing
that
years.
is-
Not in the state.
Actually-
that is a talking point. That's
Okay,
Actually,
we've abused our
It's
native
true.
population that way for a long, long
Well, I
time.
think he's somebody who might have a little bit of personal understanding with that, and it would be interesting to hear what he has to say.
well, the immigration problem is something that we've been dealing for a long time. Right now, trust me, I'm not a Trump supporter here. I'm far from that, but I believe that we do have a very polarized country right now, and people from this side who are leaning a little bit to this side, just because from this side we keep pulling, people get farther and farther apart, and you just kind of pick sides. Before the elections, I remember talking to so many people who I would have never pictured voting for this guy. Never, ever. I mean, they're the best human beings on the planet. But because this world has become so polarized, they were like, okay, but he does hold up some of my core values that I think I'm willing to sacrifice other things just for that. And I think the most common one was probably abortion. A lot of Christians that I know very personally were willing to let go of everything else in order to, in their words, save lives.
I think taxes was one of the main reasons why middle class people who were on the more liberal side voted for Trump, was because of taxes and the economy. Mainly the economy.
It's a perception that he was a good businessman too.
It's
Exactly.
that, but it's not so much that. It's that he
Exactly.
was doing everything
But
that
even if he
Obama
was.
didn't want to do, and there were a lot of people that didn't agree with Obama's policy strictly in regards to taxes and in regards to economics.
I know.
In terms of how it affected them in their everyday.
Right. And I know a lot of people just wanted to vote for him because he was going to go in and shake things up and do things differently. And really, I mean, I don't know.
Drain the swamp.
He's the change campaign.
Well,
Exactly. Which is funny.
Well, even if
Because Obama was
even if he was a very good businessman, it still would be a problem. A business is not ran as a democracy.
Country is not a business.
Right. A CEO never runs his company thinking of, oh, how can I make this company better for the people working at the bottom? No, he's always thinking, I make the decisions. You don't know what you're talking about. I will do whatever the hell I want to do. And that's what people wanted for some reason. Going back to your
Well, and
point,
I feel like people didn't
maybe
educate
people
themselves.
some people do want that.
Well, but all he's ever done is get businesses and gut them, and and draw money off of, like, all he's done is make money off of failing businesses. Like, things failing is all he's really been good at.
I lived in the South for a long time, longer than I would have liked, and I know firsthand the hatred in the South in general.
yeah.
It's a very dark place.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, because of that hatred, I think when they finally had someone with the guts to say what they have all been thinking for so long, it was the platform that they finally needed. And I feel like it was a symptom that had of years and years and years of never ever being addressed.
Yeah.
And I think
Angry
it's something that
white
needs to be
entitlement.
addressed. So in some ways, maybe this presidency is a good thing.
Yeah, well,
Well, yeah,
what I was going to
definitely.
say is I don't think he's the perpetrator of what's happening in the country. He's the result of what has been happening in the country for so long that we have decided to just, like, cover.
I think he was the
you know?
best one at riding the wave.
I think
If it hadn't been him, it would have been somebody
He
else.
was the best one at manipulating online systems. That's what it was. Is that so? There was a whole campaign of disenfranchisement where they basically were posting stuff trying to get people to not vote in specific districts, but in a way that, like, legally you're not allowed to try to get people to not vote. But it was like targeting, like, oh, we're gonna target this community, which is specifically made up of like 90% of whatever ethnicity, and we're gonna be like, oh, this person hates that ethnicity or whatever it is, and like having a program that was specifically designed to get people to not vote, and as well as understanding if I get this amount of people from these places, in terms of the white supremacist vote, like Nazis. And then on the other side, when he pulled in with Mike Pence, he pulled in the evangelical side, and the promise of Roe v. Wade with, he said that when he was being elected, that, like, no, I'm definitely going to make sure that that's reversed, and that secured that entire base, because that is one
Single
issue
voters.
that is the number one issue that I can think of out of anything that automatically cements you into a camp. There's no other that there's not, like, well, I lean this way, but I have a perspective.
Maybe socializing healthcare now.
But I think there's a lot of people that believe in a middle ground, in terms of like Medicaid, Medicare. There's people that support those programs but don't believe in a socialized system, and it's a very myopic viewpoint that doesn't take in economics, where you're like, hey,
doesn't take in the rest of the planet.
that too, yeah. And it's fascinating because, like, when we were young students, elementary school, middle school, the structure was so different than politics these days.
So Kavanaugh, his nominee, he's the one who encouraged the Republican Party to ask Bill Clinton dirty questions when
Right.
Monica Lewinsky rolled around. And the thing is, that was a consensual affair. Whether or not you think the President of the United States should be having an affair really doesn't matter too much to how effective he is in the office.
Yeah.
But Kavanaugh and a bunch of other legal bulldogs had information in advance, and they essentially set a perjury trap for Clinton. Something they knew he would fib about, so that they could turn it into those impeachment proceedings. And if we're talking about things a president has done that are unpresidential, that would lead you to being impeached on character grounds, I'm having a hard time understanding how Bill Clinton ends up there and Donald Trump isn't there
Well,
6
that's
months
like
ago.
the biggest thing, is because he has people supporting him that are willing to put up with his lies and put up with his racism and put up with everything else and his pussy grabbing and all of that. Because I don't know, I have a hard time because I find a lot of people are just closeted racists. And I find that they
It's
use
amazing
a
how
lot
that's
of.
come out.
It's
Like,
insane.
How clear it's just like, oh damn, I didn't realize that you were like that racist.
It's
Oh, I'm
crazy.
not racist. No,
No,
that was
no, you
racist.
are.
That was
No,
that was
that was
racist.
racist.
I just want to say, so I was in South Carolina and I lived there for a while, and I was a liberal in South Carolina. So I was like, I don't belong here because y'all are Republican crazy.
Right.
So I'm gonna move to Oregon where all the liberals live. So I moved to Oregon and I was like, oh my god, I am not a liberal. Like, if this what you guys, the extreme and extreme, there's no middle ground. The problem was you have these liberals who have never been to the South. They have no idea what it's like down there. It's because we're all the United States of America does not mean we're all the same. You cannot begin to tell people how to live their life without knowing what that life is. And I think there's a lot of anger in the South because of that.
But the thing is, the South lives this fantasy of the South will rise again.
No,
I mean,
that's what you're told
no.
on the news. But have you ever actually been to the South?
Yes,
Do you go grocery shopping
I just
down there?
came from Kentucky.
Did you go to school there?
I didn't go
Did
to
you grow
school
up
in
there?
Kentucky, but there are things. Confederate monuments being everywhere and people talking with pride about their rebel history. If your great-grandparents were fighting in gray during the Civil War, they were fighting to ensure the continuation of slavery. That's
Well,
not...
Not entirely.
That's okay.
That
so this is
that
the
like
craziest
stated
part, though.
reason, and
That
there's
is
so
the
many people that
stated
argue
reason
against
the
it, but it's
Confederacy...
fact.
There's a lot of really good people who reenact. I went to school in Mississippi. There's a lot of really, really good, genuine people who practice those reenactments, not because they're racist, but because that's their history.
That
That
they
is
There's
Yeah.
a difference between a
It's a
Civil
racist
War
Christian
reenactor and those
Confederation.
people who have Confederate flags in the back of their truck.
No, don't get me wrong. There's assholes down there too. But but you're making this whole wide blanket statement for the entirety of the South, and there's
Well-
so much more depth than that.
As far as in regards to the Civil War, if you read the Articles of Confederation, the first sentence in the Articles of Confederation states specifically, we are forming this union in order to secede from the American
Exactly.
country based solely on slavery. It was fought over slavery. We can't conflate that. You get these rumors that you have people like Robert E. Lee, who was more interested in states' rights, and he was a proud Virginian, and that he didn't own slaves. That's just fundamentally false. He had a few slaves, but when he married into the Washington family, he inherited an immense number of slaves, and he was incredibly famous for being brutal physically towards these slaves, and also splitting up families, kind of a psychological warfare. The South fought the Civil War for slavery.
I'm not debating
Period.
that fact. I'm saying though, there's a lot of people. The education system in America is atrocious. It's absolutely embarrassing. I went to school in the United Kingdom. I know I have something to compare this to. Okay, it's embarrassing. The people in the South are not. So many of the people in the South are not educated. It's extremely rural. It's extremely poor. So if you have all these ignorant people in the South who don't know any better, they don't know any better. And again, we have to remember they live in a completely different world than you do here. You cannot pretend to know what it's like to walk in their shoes. You can't. And it's just not
regardless,
fair.
like that's like saying like you don't know what it's like to be a racist, so maybe you should be sympathetic to them because that's just their worldview and that's how they feel. No, there's certain things where it's like I don't give a crap what your background or how you came to this viewpoint, how you came to the viewpoint that like all the Jews need to die because they're rats of society.
I don't think that's a fair comparison.
I mean,
We just had a neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
not confused. We do have massive amounts of racism in this country. But if we're just talking about votership and racism and how that affects it, when the Democrats conceded the South to the Republicans in the 60s, thank you. That has been a fundamental backbone of the Republican Party, is taking in those people who racism is a priority. Now, when you allow that to affect your decision making for an entire country, that includes all of the people of color that you are
that's
disenfranchising.
what a democracy is.
A democracy is based on the fact that all men and women and people without specifically defined genders are born equal. That's democracy. Democracy doesn't allow one person to say that I am more valuable than you.
I'm not exactly sure how this relates to what we were talking about. I kind of feel like I was saying the South
The South
has
goes
a way of living life that has shaped their opinion and perspectives of the world fairly right. And if you were born and raised in the South, it's very likely you would have believed the same way.
and
I
I'm
absolutely.
not saying it is. I don't say it is making it right, but you cannot make a holistic. You can't have a holistic opinion on something that you really don't know anything about.
I absolutely can see what you're talking about. So, and just taking on a few words, key words that you mentioned, the South is not all about racism. The South is not about all white supremacists. It's a lot more than that. And so, and their lives are not defined by that. If you talk to them and you ask them, who are you? They're not going to tell you, I'm from the South, I'm a racist, or this is what is most important for me. But what happens is that the liberal agenda, I'm going to call it, trying to be careful with what I'm going to say, but the liberal agenda entitles a lot more than only civil rights. Unfortunately, that's what only the part that makes the news, but unfortunately that is not the only part that is included in the liberal agenda, and that affects the people from the South tremendously. Not only the people from the South, the people who live in communities that are surrounded by other bigger communities with larger populations that are mostly liberal. I take, for example, the people from Southern California and Orange County, for example. Their vote, for example, means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And there are people who are liberal who find themselves in more conservative states where their vote means absolutely nothing either. And they're affected by that. And of course, the resentment grows. And as I mentioned before, then there comes a moment when they just have to take a side because nobody agrees 100% with any of the candidates at all. Nobody agrees 100% with whoever. But they're like, okay, well, I have to compromise. I have to see what will affect my life immediately. And we all can be a little self-righteous and say, well, but they're not thinking about this and not thinking about that. But at the end of the day, we all do it. We all look out for the people who are closest to us first. And we as artists tend to be a little bit more liberal because we are in a very very colorful society. We're all surrounded by people with different genders, different sexual identities, different races, different backgrounds of all sorts. And so we are somewhat forced to become these people who are a little bit more accepting, but that is nothing more than the result of the environment we have found ourselves in. And I think that a lot of people will never get themselves to a position like that, and it's not necessarily bad. I mean, it's not necessarily bad that they're not surrounded by other people, they're not confronted with other realities. It's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to be a world citizen. But as a democracy, or as citizens of this democracy, we have to realize that there are certain aspects of democracy itself that are not beneficial to everybody. And that's because no system, and I'm speaking only personal views, I don't think there's a single system that's going to serve everybody all the time. There's always going to be somebody who is oppressed in some way or another. However, the conversation is very beneficial. We can bring up different topics and different issues that we can address one at a time. But, you know, I think that your point is very valid.
I think it's important not to tell people that you're wrong, I'm right, go away.
Oh, I think we're talking about it a lot because he keeps bringing it up because it was a lot of lies.
He keeps bringing it up because a lot of people won't let it go.
I mean, we've had this institution put in place for 250 plus years because it's meant to protect the electorate from electing someone dangerous. I think that there are a lot of alarmists trying to tell you that Trump is one of those exact people that the Electoral College is meant to prevent electing. But that's funny because it did.
Yeah, but when you have the majority of the country voting for the other person and then still getting Trump, doesn't it raise a couple of alarms in your head and say,
So you
okay,
didn't want Obama's second term?
Well, maybe so. Maybe it shouldn't have been right. Maybe we just have to take a look at the whole electorate system, anyways.
I would say that
Maybe.
that's probably a good idea because when I look at the U.S. is not necessarily a strict democracy; it's a republic, and especially when you look at the electoral college and the irony that it tends to act like affirmative action for rural states or rural areas. It gives significant higher voting power to people in, say, Idaho as opposed to Southern California.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. We need to take a look at this. I mean, it was a close call, but definitely unfair in my opinion.
And I think, the reason that it keeps being talked about is the fact that the system of election, the previous election, there's a lot of controversy about what happened as opposed to taking investigative action and really getting to the bottom of what happened in terms of Russia's influence and interference. I mean, it's clear there was interference and there was an effort by Russia to undermine our election and our elected system. And when you have a meeting with President Trump and he's meeting with Putin and the way that he interacted with him during that whole
And no
whole-
cameras in the room the
Yeah.
entire time.
it doesn't make it look good when he's kicking people out of the Oval Office to have meetings with Russians and his extreme denial.
I'm sorry, but
wait,
during
how
the-
many meetings do you normally watch in the Oval Office?
Independent of any other people in there, having I guess if it's that bringing hostile foreign government officials into the White House as one of your first active measures as a president, especially when that's the organization or group that they believe was the problem where it originated.
If
We
we're-
don't make peace with our friends.
If you're talking
Well,
about Russian collusion
friends.
in 2016 election, though, Donald Trump had no authority over that. That was still
But
Barack
as a-
Obama enforcing the law. He was still president in chief during the 2016 election. He should have been the one to enforce the law. He should have been the one to be like, Russia, knock it off. He
So
should have been
it's
the
so.
one-
But wait, so you're saying Obama is guilty for Trump colluding with the Russians?
I'm saying that he didn't take enough power as a. I'm
What?
saying that he didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry,
exercise his
I'm
power.
sorry, officer. I stole this from the supermarket. It's your fault for not policing right on me.
Okay, let's just say that. Okay,
Really
I get
though.
what he's
I'm
coming from. I don't think
actually
it's fair
going
say
to
that.
agree with the FBI. I'm actually going to agree with the CIA and say that their evidence is correct and that Russia did actively seek to influence our elections. They sought to get a man in office who wasn't going to be unreasonable and not talk to another superpower. Now, whether or not they controverted our processes is one thing. Whether or not he was involved is something completely different.
Well, yeah. And
Wait,
but
you're
look at
okay
the
with that?
Information that's come out since.
I don't-
especially
You're okay with the
meeting.
question?
The question needs to
If
be
somebody had asked that about Obama, would you have had that opinion too? You wouldn't have been up in arms? Oh my gosh, this terrorist!
I think the question was, do we believe in the current voting process in our country? And if we don't, if it's failed us, what's the alternative?
popular vote.
Well, yeah.
I don't. Well, no,
Popular
no, no.
vote.
I don't think popular vote is necessarily the
down with
answer. But
popular
I'm
vote.
saying, how many times have we reviewed the amount of electoral votes that go to each state? I mean, the populations are constantly changing, and right now they're
Redrawing the
really.
map wouldn't be terrible either, but if you're going to be overhauling that system, you might as well just throw it out.
Well, with the
Not
same,
necessarily,
like
because
the
it
same
still
formula,
serves smaller communities.
the same formula that it is now. I don't think it would change too much with the difference in population. I think it would probably be relatively
Any kind of difference when you have a close call, I think, is important.
right. Yeah,
And people
I
wouldn't
agree
be
with
able to
that.
say, well, my vote doesn't count as much. I think that's unacceptable.
Part of
That's unacceptable.
Part of the biggest problem is the separation between rural and urban areas. Because it tends to be that our urban voters tend to vote the same way because they tend to have similar
Bubbles.
sets of understanding, So when you look at how that vote is, with the current system, it gives a lot more power to the rural. And it basically, it's almost that we need two forms of government, one for the areas that are rural that have a certain set of principles and values, and then also for the urban areas. Because some of the concepts that, you know, if you live in rural America, you can have a farm on your house, no problem. But if you live in the middle of a city, you don't have an option. If you live in an apartment, you can't. It's not possible, you know.
Well, I feel like a lot of the reason the question was about.
Did I get the question wrong?
Regarding
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's
Thank you. No, what was
Well,
the question then?
it was why are we still talking about the voting, the difference that like that he won? Like, why are we still talking about that? That it should have been like the popular vote
Sore
versus.
losers.
Yeah, I mean, except a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, you can name it whatever you want,
A
but
lot
it's
of-
injustice.
A lot of stuff was done about
I
voter
voted.
fraud as well. A lot of stuff talking about how, just like the driver license situation, all of the things that you had to have to vote, a lot of that was messed with for urban areas, for poorer areas, and those are the people that most likely would not be voting for Trump. And those people were messed with during the election. I think that there was a lot of stuff that happened that was completely unfair and completely unjust, and that's why a lot of people are still talking about it.
And
I'm
illegal
sorry, but
gerrymandering.
we're obsessed with the Electoral College and how it robbed Clinton. But let's face it, maybe Clinton should have gone to Wisconsin. Maybe Clinton should have gone to Michigan. Maybe she should have actually campaigned in these blue states that are normally blue and that have been blue for 30 years, and then flipped red when Trump came around.
Of course, well, they
There's
were
this
playing the
conspiracy.
politics game, but that's something that they all have to play. They
she
shouldn't,
didn't.
but they shouldn't have to be playing it. It shouldn't be a game of a strategy. It should be, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm gonna do for you guys, and then people to be able to make their decisions.
And I fully
Not
agree.
like,
No,
oh,
no,
you
no,
came
but
and
that's
greeted my
what we're
hand.
set
up to do, but there's. I'm sorry, if you guys want democratic policies, vote. And make sure everybody who thinks like you votes.
I mean, yeah,
You
said-
guys lose for a reason. We show
Yeah,
up.
because we have the
And
urban
that's
areas
American,
that are,
by the
are
way.
at an intentional disadvantage based on what the Electoral College does and what it happened. You know, okay, 7 rural states have as big of a population as Los Angeles.
Correct.
7.
But
So that's
what?
14.
It's affecting a lot
Okay.
more people.
14.
Okay, but
Versus
talking
2,
about
you know,
those
for a
rural
whole
populations, yes, they're only responsible for a certain number of our people, but those rural areas are responsible for a lot of our economics too, because we produce things in our farmland.
God,
No,
compared to
wow,
California?
wow.
Well,
Come on.
Like-
but that's what the electoral
Yeah,
college
you're
is
speaking out of your
for.
ass.
The electoral college is for making sure that these communities that rely on this thing that
affirmative
nobody
action
else
for-
relies on still have it.
It's affirmative action for
It's exactly
rural
that. It
areas.
is exactly that.
So you hurl that word like it's a bad thing, but if I were to say affirmative action like it was a bad
I'm-
thing,
I'm-
everybody would treat me
Yeah,
like
it's
shit.
to think. It's to make you think about it, because you complain about it freely all the time. I mean, I hear you all the time complain about it.
I'm sorry, but I just hear a lot of excuses being made for someone that was the least popular candidate in American history, who had 25 years of Fox News saying she's the devil for this reason or that reason. She was an unpopular candidate and she lost.
She was popularity. She won the popular vote.
Yep.
So to say that she's
Yeah.
unpopular, I mean that doesn't even make
Most
sense.
people just think, let that sink. Let that sink. Most people in the United States wanted her to be president.
More people
Like what-
wanted her than they wanted
Or-
Trump.
To fool enough people enough of the time. or
Fool.
whatever.
A part of your responsibility as a U.S. citizen is to vote. If that's how you feel, show up. I'm
I do
sorry,
so.
everybody
Okay,
showed
okay,
up for my
okay.
candidate.
Okay, no. But let me. Thank you for bringing up that point, because another problem that we have with our system is that why do we have such few options? Why do I have to choose between this guy and this guy? That's not right. Maybe that's something we should look into.
I
I'm
mean,
not disagreeing with you
it's
on that
dwindled
point.
down from a lot
Let's
of people,
think
though,
about
babe.
something. There's third-party candidates. There was third-party candidates like Jill Stein, who is only on the ballot in 31 states. States that include Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas. Do we really think someone from the Green Party is going to win? She would have needed to have won all of those states if she was going to be the president.
Yeah.
We have really crappy third-party candidates and options. If
Well, it's
we
not
want
that-
third
it's a
parties to
system.
build
No,
their
no, it's the
power,
system
they
and the
need to
money,
start
the way
focusing
they're
more on
able
the
to raise
Senate.
money. They're not able to raise money the same way the Republicans
Because
and the
nobody
Democrats
believes
are.
in
them.
No, no,
If
no,
they
no.
were
There are
Bernie.
specific regulations about the electoral system that prevents them from being able to access to the amount of money that Republicans do and Democrats
You need
do.
a certain percentage of the polls. Like you need to poll at a
It's
certain
a
percentage
lot
to
more
show
than
up in
that.
a debate. You need.
It's more than that.
But
Explain it to
being
me
able
because
get
I'm in
to
the dark.
point where you can get to a debate.
You can read it in the bookstore.
It's almost impossible in this country.
I'm not here to teach you.
That's why third parties should focus more on the House and the Senate. So they have people that are getting kind of national recognition. They're putting forth bills in the Senate and build from there. You don't go straight to the top. Let's say Gary Johnson was elected in 2016. Let's imagine. You think there's a partisan sort of dissonance or something? It would have been tenfold. Nothing would have gotten accomplished if a third-party candidate was elected to president. They would have been getting massacred from the left and the right.
Well, and you know, like we don't want too many parties too, because you look at countries like Germany and stuff, and it's you have to end up forming these alliances, and it
Coalitions.
creates a system of stalemate in a sense, which is part of the reason for a two-party. But I think that we do need more than two parties, but I don't think we need more than four.
I
Well,
agree
China
with
is
you.
a multi-party country, and it's actually doing really, really well for them.
And
Wait, we're
Okay, no, that's not-
election practices.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
is
let's
that
not
funny?
make that comparison.
Why is that funny? They are. Why wouldn't we look at China as a country that has its own reputable reasonings and ways of doing things?
Well, I mean,
Why?
they're-
Yeah, but when they've had a history, like
We have a history of that, but have you looked into what's going on there and how much they've gotten better? Their GDP has grown significantly since the 1990s.
Well,
Yeah, but the
I
quality-
mean,
yeah, but
they
the
have-
quality of their
there's
life.
a lot of other
America is
things
I mean-
there.
indebted to
There's
them
a
for
lot.
the war on terror. You finance a war by bonds. America never officially declared war when we went into Afghanistan and Iraq. They called it something other than war bonds. But who do you think financed the war on terror? China. They bought all the bonds, and all of a sudden we're in debt to them. Of course, their GDP has gone up. It has gone up based on us failing.
Well, it's more than that.
No, it's based on us outsourcing a lot of stuff there too. You know, I mean, we supported the growth of the industrial sector in that country pretty substantially with people
At what cost?
manufacturing domestically. I don't know. You know, I see though, like with China, there's a lot of other nuance there in terms of multiple stock markets and things like that. I mean, you know, if you're a Chinese citizen, you get a bit handcuffed there in terms of your investment opportunities and what kind of classifications of stocks and things that you're actually able to invest in. You know.
Well,
So I mean, to me, I don't see like I mean, I don't know that I'd look to China in terms of being the idealistic viewpoint of a multi-party
oh, I certainly
system,
don't think it's
so-
idealistic, but I do think that it may be a little bit inhibitive or maybe even a little bit ignorant to say that two-party is the way to go.
Oh, absolutely.
agree
And I'm not
there, yeah.
saying that we shouldn't try and get away from the two-party system. I'm saying that if you're trying to be the next competitive party, you don't go straight to the top of the pyramid. You need to build a foundation.
Okay, fair. But we
Like
can
the
all
Tea
be,
Party.
we're all in agreement that needs to change. Like, I can see a lot of opinions and back and forth and this and this and that. But at the end of the day, I see us agreeing at least on the fact that there needs to be more than two parties.
And, you know,
We agree that, you know, the end result of an election shouldn't end up with the majority of the country being up in arms.
And I think that, you know, goes back to the original point. That's why we're still talking about it, because I think people on both sides kind of agree that the system isn't working for us.
I have a question. So, I voted for Romney. He won the popular vote. And we were told to drop it and leave it alone. That news story died in 3 months.
How did
Yeah,
you-
but
no,
now
no, but-
your president is still talking about it. Like,
But here's the thing,
that
though,
has a lot to do with it.
So if you look
He's-
at Romney, the thing is, yeah, he won the popular vote, but the problem was there was nothing where people were like, oh, a foreign country actively tried to influence this election. Now, if that had happened, I guarantee Obama would have done at least an FBI investigation.
And we've had an FBI investigation
And what did
going
it
on
say?
almost since Donald Trump has been in office.
And-
I'll tell you what
Yeah.
it said.
Well, and he's trying to undermine it.
Exactly.
He's trying to undermine it.
Exactly.
And we've
Tax
gotten
evasion.
and tax evasion.
Oh,
no
tax.
collusion, no contact.
Well,
with
except
Russia.
for his son.
What charges does his son say?
Exactly.
Oh, no, he
Charges
doesn't
do
have
his
any
son
charges
A
yet.
letter that he
Yet.
wrote for his son, like
Or the meeting that he had where they all
Exactly.
lied about it, and he lied about even knowing
Exactly.
about it. And the fact that, like, I mean, that's collusion. Like what his son did by meeting and trying to get
Collusion.
dirt from a foreign agent. I mean, that's.
Would
yeah.
you have
There's
called
people-
it
I'll tell you
collusion
this,
if
there's
he
people
showed
that are
up
gonna go to
in
jail.
country and somebody said, "I've got dirt on Hillary Clinton"? That woman who's been in politics forever and has done tons of sleazy things and spent so much time in front of the Senate
And
Judiciary.
has had
We've
more
got stuff on
conversations
her.
about Kama
If this
Sutra.
person was
Okay.
American, would it be
Okay,
collusion?
but there's more than just that problem. The guy was lying.
straight.
He was found to be
Every
lying.
politician lies.
Oh yeah, but
at what point
and
are we
what
gonna give
and
up
when
on
and
that?
when can we trust him on other things? If he says, "Well, I only did this," well, if we only already found him lying about one thing, why are we gonna trust him on everything else?
Let's say
We
water,
can't.
Water is the equivalent of lies. You know, there's a difference between a stream and an ocean.
True.
I mean,
So you know
Obama
the
was-
percentage and the volume and the blatant truth. I mean, there are blatant truths that he has falsified. You know, it's not like it's. I mean, yeah, there's matters of opinion that are up for debate, but there are plenty of facts that are lie.
Yeah, that he has completely lied about in front of everyone.
No, I'm not saying. I agree. Almost every politician has lied. You know, there's no politician that's never lied.
and
but
Barack Obama is also guilty of campaign violation.
Okay, that is
Oh,
classic.
okay.
Okay, but that is classic. What you just did, that's classic rhetoric from Trump supporters. What is? Oh well, what about this? What about that? Somehow, what you've done is justified by what everybody else does.
So
That's
you
not- that's
start
not what I'm
with what
saying.
about this, and we respond, and then we say what about that when we're done, and somehow it's wrong when we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm playing a little bit of whataboutism right now, but I'm just trying to point out there's a little bit of hypocrisy here, and that your outrage
But
is
can
not
we
consoled-
focus on your candidate
So
lying and
Well,
not
let's
put it on
focus
someone
on
else?
our- okay, no,
let's
you're
focus
assuming-
on our candidate lying. Fine. Every politician lies. He does it differently. He
can't-
does a lot, but he's actually moving his agenda forward.
Oh,
He
so it doesn't matter how he
overpromises.
does it. Doesn't matter how he does it, but when
Hey,
Barack
if you
Obama
don't-
passes executive laws, then
Oh, wait.
Whoa!
It doesn't matter how he does it. So let's talk
That's
about
what-
Barack
that's what you
Obama,
said.
and
That's what
it
you're-
doesn't matter how he does it. Let's look at.
What- You're still
And he's
pointing
making-
at Barack Obama. Exactly what I just said. You're still doing.
This is about this guy, not about Obama. We want to fix the whole thing.
So okay.
We don't want to win over you. We're just trying to fix the situation.
Can we talk about
from
your
now
president?
on?
Can we
Okay.
pull
Right
our
now.
emotions
I
back
just
a little
said
bit and like
he
actually talk
lied.
like we're like trying to figure something out instead of just like bitching back and forth?
Hey, it's not personal. I'm not hurt.
I said he lies.
I'm not
I
right.
said he lies differently. What I am going to say is all of that subterfuge works. Hate it if you want, but he's getting it done.
Yeah,
you can
it's
go
like
to the
saying-
lowest
it's
common
like- it's
denominator,
like-
race to the bottom. We all lose.
It's like when Hitler would get stuff done in his country too.
Hitler murdered people. On
Yeah,
his way
and he
to
got a lot of
office.
things done for
That's
Germany
a
too.
brilliant-
You know?
Whoa. But getting back to the basics, Hitler didn't have anything to do with Gore and Bush. That is where we started this conversation. What is the difference between that particular election and what is going on today?
Nobody liked Gore.
Well, Trump is a whole other
I like
species
decor.
of politician. I think we've never had someone like this before. He was a reality star. He's a crooked human being. He's narcissistic
True.
personality disorder.
Okay.
We've never had anyone like that before.
I'm sorry, but if you're running for the highest office in land and you've persuaded yourself that, yeah, I'm the person who should be making all the decisions for the 350 Americans, you are a narcissist.
Not true.
I'm sorry.
No,
Politicians-
absolutely
no,
not.
no.
Absolutely.
Politicians
I
should-
disagree 100%
No,
with that.
and politicians should serve the people. They shouldn't be narcissists. And of
They're
course,
the greatest
some
server
them,
of all.
Some of them probably are, but Trump is a complete narcissist, and not all candidates are. Not all politicians are
I
narcissists.
just
Some really
fundamentally
want to help
disagree with you on
people.
that. And you know what? Donald Trump is helping people. Let's take a look.
Who's
at
he helping? You?
Yeah, I had a huge tax cut
I'm
this year
sure.
because of him.
I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah?
you did.
But
How
let's
about
think
that
about
$1 trillion of debt that we now have? Just because you borrow money on a credit card doesn't mean you're rich.
Right.
not.
Well, that's what happened. He borrowed money.
You gotta
We-
spend money to make money, though.
No.
stupid.
Okay,
President
all the
Jones
money he
So let's
uses
think-
on security,
let's
all the
think
money
about
he
this,
uses
though.
on renting
Do you know why he
places.
gave those tax cuts to the top 1% that everyone's trying to vilify?
Yeah, because of
It's because he's
Citizens
trying to
United
make-
and money in politics,
He's
because
He's
they have a
trying to
stronger
make
vote.
he's trying to make America competitive for jobs. He's trying to encourage companies like Apple to come back here, to start focusing here, and it's working. The
Oh,
trade
yeah?
war
Yeah,
is
how did that work
shifted.
for Carrier? How did
He
that work
could
for
be.
Ford? How did that work for all these companies that like now? So for example, BMW is going to be leaving.
BMW is a German company.
Yeah, and they're not.
Yeah, but they
they're-
provide so
one of
many
their
jobs for
largest
Americans,
facilities
like-
is in Georgia.
American
you're-
companies can do that too, and then the profits actually go to us.
Yeah, but that is the start of a trade war.
Yeah, and
It's a
trade
front.
wars have
The
winners.
nice
So,
thing
I'm
that
sorry,
he
who's
did-
going to beat America in a trade war?
Uh,
Who has the product to actually come to the table and negotiate with America that way?
Yeah, but
Where
the
we're
problem
going,
the
some
problem is
will.
that yes, maybe on paper you say America wins,
Insane.
but the only losers
what?
out of that trade war ends up being Americans as well.
Okay, let's get.
I mean, I can just
Okay,
see it
agree.
in the future.
Back
we
on
are supposed to
topic.
be talking about boring gore and
Can I say
No.
He asked what's the difference between the 2000 election and the 2016 election. I don't see a difference. The rules are the same. We have an electoral college. You have to. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if it was just this idealistic, I believe in this and I believe in that, and then we all came together. But no, it's an electoral college. It's been that way for decades.
Well, the question
You
is,
know-
why
you know
are
what
we
the
still
difference-
talking about
you know
it?
what
The
the
question is,
difference
why
is?
are we talking about it
It's
now?
eliminating the superdelegate system and in having them vote with the popular, as opposed to independent.
You know what's you know what the difference
even a
could,
little bit.
The question-
push
You
know
it
what the
more
difference
towards
might
where
be?
It's actually based on the popular, but not fully and strictly.
I mean, it's just a flat circle. We're just talking in circles.
running him
It's the
over.
same conversation we had in 2000. People were unhappy with the fact that Gore lost the electoral college, which is what you need to win, and cried about it forever, and it's happening again.
Well,
we know
we-
these rules. You lost.
We
I'm
stopped.
sorry.
Okay, we
Okay.
stopped talking about it fairly quickly after that election, right? We're still talking about it now for a lot of different reasons.
Exactly.
But-
My personal reason why I'm still talking it is just because I hate Trump, and I think that he shouldn't have won. I think he's a piece of shit for this country, and that's how I feel. Okay, he's always getting after me.
Nice.
For-
I love
but
you.
love you too. Honestly, I still stick by the fact that a lot of the reason why we're still talking about it is because we also have a man in office who can't let it go either. And the fact that he's still talking about, oh, I won so huge and so bigly over Hillary and crooked Hillary and this and that. He should be making change in America. He shouldn't still be talking about Hillary and Obama.
Change in
That
America.
might-
You can talk
and he's
about
still
those things
talking
at the
about
same
it.
time, and you didn't vote.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It
He
was
still
to
has
make
an opinion.
it was to make a point.
Yes, you did. You made a really strong point that you didn't care enough, and the people
and
who
we're-
cared
and we're
elected
t-
Donald J. Trump.
And we're talking about it.
I'm sorry, but
We're talking about it. Maybe
a
it'll bring
reason-
change.
there's a reason that
He's already
you
brought
have
a
to
bunch
be
of change.
there's a
Yeah.
reason you have to be 18
Yeah.
to vote. You need to be an adult, and a lot of voting is a lot like being an adult and making every other adult decision. You don't always have options that are pretty that you like, but because you're an adult, you suck it up and you make a choice.
And
So-
you made
so-
the
Voting
choice
for
him?
no one
Wait,
is
I got-
Listen,
I got a
listen,
question
listen.
here.
I have. Sorry, you can go.
Yeah.
So if we had a system where people got to vote and gosh, I don't know how to explain this. What were you gonna say?
Katie, go on.
What I was gonna say is that one of the reasons why it might be different, and why we still are talking about this, is that we never had a candidate for which such a large amount of the population left their core values for in order to defend few little things. See, when you were talking about Al Gore and you were talking about Bush, you had two people who were still morally capable of leading the country in a way that wouldn't be shameful for most of us.
Right.
So they
And
run
now,
the country
listen,
and look
listen,
good
listen,
while they're
listen,
doing it?
listen. That is a very
No, it's a
important thing.
worldview. It's
You
how
might
look.
you might not care about it, but most of the population, I believe, care about it, and that's why most of the population didn't vote for him. What I'm going at is most.
Enough of the
Think about it. Think about it. Most Christians, and I come from a Christian background. Most Christians don't like the guy. They don't like him.
And a ton of them voted for him anyway.
Yes, of course.
Because
That's what
of
I'm
the core
saying.
values.
And that's
So do
why
they
we're talking
really
about
not
it.
like him?
They don't like him. They really
Yeah, they
don't
voted,
like
you know,
him.
just based on Roe v. Wade.
They
From
voted.
us to
They
review.
voted on
Well, then
because
they-
they were almost cornered into voting. They were like they knew that they were not gonna give that up. They knew that Christians were not gonna say, okay, well, you know, we're just gonna be away with the whole abortion thing. We're just gonna be away with it, and they were practically cornered into that.
There,
We
okay,
didn't give him.
So-
It's like we didn't give him a choice.
there are a lot of people who went from Bernie to Trump, which is insane.
Well, that's, you know, the outside candidate.
Well,
That's
a
what
lot
happens
of
when
people,
you have
though,
the least popular
a lot
candidate.
of people went from Bernie to Trump, and they had views that, that Bernie had, and they were very liberal, and they still voted for Trump. And reason being is also because Trump made a lot of promises and said a lot of lies about things that he has completely backed off of, like LGBT. Okay, all of that, LGBTQ. He stood up there and professed his love for them and held a flag and said,
come out against them since then.
okay,
All
well
of the policy.
exactly his
They're
policy
getting
No, go ahead.
the whole transgender in the army kind of situation. That's LGBT. That's a
That's
huge
budget.
thing that it doesn't matter. That's a huge thing that he said that he would be and stand with them on, and he went back on it. And there's a lot of, just like the whole that's my black over there, he hasn't done anything for black people. He's promised all of these things for people, and then he's gone back on it afterwards, and those people voted for him.
That's a first in American history.
It's almost like this is a president people just had to put up with. Like, all right, we'll have Trump almost like, all right, we'll vote for him.
That
Instead
seems
of,
familiar.
I don't think I misunderstood the question earlier. I think I did understand the question, and I think the reason why we're still talking about it is because the system is broken.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think we need to
Okay.
find an
So,
alternative.
okay, here's my question. What are your thoughts? You know, you talk about coming out to vote. What are your ideas on mandatory voting?
Don't
I
have any
think you need to
problem
be.
with it
This
at
is
all.
going to sound so terrible, and
So
I
what
thought
I
this
mean, you
about-
have to be a United
policies
States
that-
citizen, but
What
you
about
actually.
policies that disenfranchise people that would have normally voted, such as voter ID laws?
I'm
I
gonna be
mean,
honest.
I made it to the DMV. I don't see why anyone else can't.
Well, yeah, but you're
whoa!
God.
pursuing an advanced degree.
Oh my
You
lord.
know, you also probably had a car growing up, huh? You also probably came from a family that wasn't living on the support of multiple jobs from their single parent. You know, so yeah, your perspective is one, but I agree. Yeah, you could probably make it to the DMV much easier than the rural elderly man.
And
who's
you know what? I'm
in
gonna hold
poverty.
that rural elderly man to the same standard of personal responsibility that I held myself to.
That's not
I
personal
didn't-
That has
responsibility.
nothing
No,
to do
that's
with
called
personal
Getting yourself to-
citizenship.
That's
Getting
not
yourself
called
to the
citizenship
You need
either.
a license to be a citizen. I could take my birth certificate. Why couldn't I? Because of this bullshit concept of like, oh well, you have to show an ID because so many people are like trying to double vote or like some bullshit. No, that doesn't happen like that.
Exactly. But we're still talking about that, and he's still bringing that up.
I mean, if you
Because
were the
it's-
subject of an investigation based on your election, you would probably be talking about the election too. It's been a year and a half. of of an investigation getting thicker and thicker and fewer convictions actually related to collusion, yeah, it's probably going to be a big topic when it's the only topic that the
It was
Democrats
a
are willing
big
to bring up.
topic the day after he won.
Because we've
No,
been seeing.
you know,
He's
you
been
look at,
talking
like,
about it since day one.
I mean, with
Okay.
Bush Gore though,
But
it,
now we're a year.
it was an ongoing thing with Bush and Gore. The difference is that the administration took active measures to try to make the population feel comfortable with what happened. In terms of, you know, there's a whole hanging Chad incident in Florida. You know, that was a whole system to have reassurance in our electoral system. So, you know, with this previous election, there was no measures put in there in terms of what action the president's taking to verify. He actually said against that, you know.
Here's the real difference between 2000 and 2016. Gore had the decency, as much as I didn't like him, he had the decency to concede. He was concerned about the fabric of the American
Who didn't
democracy.
concede?
Clinton didn't concede.
She hella conceded. Have you seen
She
her
called him.
recently?
As
She
soon
hasn't
as
been
the
around.
votes were in,
She
like,
conceded. She
what are
backed
you
out of the
talking about?
spotlight.
Fake news.
If perhaps if you would let someone finish, you might learn something in college. But
Did you hear what we said?
Yeah.
Did you hear what we said?
if you
He's
look,
quick on the snapback.
Gore had the decency to be like, you know what? I won the popular vote. There's this question about Florida, but America needs to move on. We can't have this be the discussion that tears the fabric of
said
democracy
no, like,
apart.
we're gonna wait until
whereas
the
the
hanging Chad
liberals are
incident is
still
done.
crying about losing.
Okay, you're talking about the liberals versus Gore. Okay, no.
That's not
Our
what I said.
candidate did back out.
Yes, but you've been whining about it for 2 years now almost.
Your baby in office has been whining about it for 2 years. Are you kidding?
I mean,
You
if
can't
that was the subject of an investigation pertaining to how I got elected, like I said.
And
it's
it,
gonna
wait,
be
is that
like
investigation not right?
No,
You
okay,
think that
okay, if you
investigation is
had
not
an
right?
investigation about your election, would you actively try to undermine the investigation into that, or would you actively
His
try to
attorney
support
general-
something that
his
comes
attorney
from us?
general recused himself.
Why wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, like by firing the guy obstructively.
Okay.
You got something to
He
hide.
admitted that he did it like in an obstructive way, you know. Like I mean, he
His
admitted
attorney
it.
general recused himself to make
Oh,
it more.
yeah.
Exactly. His
Exactly, and he's
attorney
pissed about
general
that.
recused
He's pissed
himself.
about that.
Like,
That
I don't
means
think you're
you're
seeing the same thing I'm seeing. It's like we're looking at
Recusing
the,
yourself means you're stepping away from an investigation so an impartial person can commit it.
Yeah, and he was upset about that.
I'm,
So why
Yeah.
why would he
Still
be pissed off
recused.
that an impartial person would be?
He elected the guy.
Yeah, well, you know,
Because he's assuming that the entire investigation is garbage.
or he's,
Oh,
or he's
hold on.
trying to
or
come.
he's covering.
Yeah.
How long have we been investigating? Seriously, at what point are you expecting the dam to break? What point are you expecting a headline to come out and say, "Oh yes, he absolutely
Have
knew
you been watching the
everything,"
news?
because it
Have you
would
been
have
watching
come
the
by
news?
now.
We already had convictions.
If he would stop firing
Convictions
everybody who
for
goes against
tax
him.
evasion, convictions for
Campaign
everything.
finance
Because he's a dirty ass
And those
person.
things are not wrong.
Okay, hey, you.
I'm not saying that they're not wrong, but they have nothing
Oh,
to do with
that
him.
already disqualified a bunch of people who are working in the White House.
Just the way that he paid off
you know it.
Stormy
Look.
Daniels, that alone.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't know if you remember back to Gary Hart, but Gary Hart lost the primary because the affair came out. You know, this is it, and that's the exact thing. You know, it has ruined people, and so by doing this, it's an active measure to influence the election as well.
I just don't understand the inconsistent outrage with the left. I mean, Obama was guilty of campaign violation. as
so-
But
well.
he
So
paid.
again,
He
we're
paid,
talking-
and he
we're
didn't
talking
start to say,
river
"Well, fake news." Blah blah blah.
Ocean.
Just paid
in
it.
terms of the reason that the campaign finance laws that Obama violated were that they and they immediately corrected in terms of not understanding where exactly how much of that money was from that source.
It was
So
a-
as
like
soon
a
as it was,
technicality.
as
If
soon
it's
as
as
it
black
was,
as white as everyone's saying, then why does he get a pass?
who?
Obama.
He
No,
didn't
he-
get
I
a
mean,
pass.
he
He,
didn't get a
he
pass.
paid it.
No, he got a pass because
he
again
paid
we
it.
stopped talking about it.
He didn't get.
He's
an
not in
investigation.
We're
office
talking
anymore.
about it right now.
He-
The hell?
We're
And we're
talking
also
about
talking
it
about
only
your-
because you want to talk about him.
Well,
That
it's
is not
because
true.
It's because you.
That's
bring up
completely not
Obama.
true.
You don't realize this.
Okay, can you have a conversation about your president without bringing up
Anyone?
my president?
Absolutely, I'll tell you how proud I am of him. He's taken
Oh,
us out
God.
of the Paris Agreement, where we were held to an unfair standard compared to every other country.
Well, we are the country that
'cause we're
pollutes the
most
most.
polluter. now I'm
Heard.
No.
competing, but-
Oh.
I just don't know if that's. I
So
just
how about-
am
how about-
skeptical.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not
Oh,
saying
wait.
it's
How
Who's the
about
one that was
eliminating-
criticizing the other for not learning something in college? Wasn't it you? Have you learned any science at all?
That's my point. I'm not exactly sure of who's the most polluting, but I'm skeptical that it's America.
Oh,
that's
and
goodness,
therefore-
Are you kidding?
And therefore we.
Gone outside?
I'm
Do you know what it's
willing
like
to
in our
bet
economy?
that
And
China
nothing
We
bad
are
is happening.
completely.
And
we are
therefore-
completely
and therefore-
materialistic.
carbon damage.
And therefore,
per
the
year.
standard we're held to is unfair. Therefore. Oh yeah. Oh guys, we're too clean. We're too clean.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
no, like,
Oh, let's pollute a
20%
little.
Okay,
for us
no,
is
you're
more than
putting that in
20% for
context
everyone else.
without any of the things that matter. You're aware that moving us towards different technology costs money.
Yeah, but we can produce new jobs that way.
So how about the fact that solar has more jobs than all of coal?
Yeah.
Of course it does. When you have
It does.
8 years of regulations.
I'm sorry, coal has been hamstrung for a couple decades.
What?
Of course,
Wait,
the
sorry,
new
say that
emerging
again?
technology.
I didn't understand anything you said.
Sorry, coal has been hamstrung for decades, but that's not the point. Emerging technologies are always going to
okay.
create jobs, but something that is a bedrock that you can continue to produce actually matters. You don't want another bubble bursting on you.
Oh, a bubble's gonna burst. I mean, that's still, there's no. I mean, that's like
Thanks,
illogical to think that a burst, a bubble. I mean, just the way that things are being quantitatively assessed in terms of.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
Yeah, being able to like create mortgage-backed securities and using more and more. Now they're securitizing fucking cars. That's a depreciable asset. You know, at least a house, that's a fucking appreciable asset. But when you do it with something that depreciates in value, you know, that right there, we're set up for a worse bubble than we ever were before.
Oh yeah.
I think the
Absolutely.
answer is clear.
I love cash,
hold
American
on.
politics
As far
are
as
on the
the-
way out. Can I please talk?
Yeah,
Thank
go
you so
on ahead.
much. I think it's become very clear that America's political system has lost extreme respect throughout the entire world, and we are on the way out. We can bitch and moan about whose party is right, but at the end of the day, it probably doesn't even matter.
I'm
Yeah.
going to say no one made a point of kowtowing to Obama globally. Yeah, he had his drone program, which killed thousands of people, by the way, and is
You'll never hear
something nobody
about outrage.
ever addressed.
You'll
Yeah,
never hear
no.
about
The Democrats aren't upset when their people kill innocent people somewhere on the other side of the world.
Hospitals.
But
There's a lot
When
more
your
that went
hospital
into
is an
that than
armory,
what you're
it's
saying.
a little bit different of a situation. When you know there's I mean, yeah, you put like you look
Yeah,
at
well,
Gaza.
I don't
and
support
it's
that.
the same sort of situation where you have people putting armories within like schools and hospitals intentionally so that they can point the finger and say, "Look what happened." You know,
There's a lot more that went into it than you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's.
at the end of the day,
Just
the
demonizing
United
it.
States
Just
actually
demonizing
has
it.
a system where you have to confirm a target. Now, we actually have a process for this. It's closed doors, but there is a congressional board that actually oversees what we are and aren't allowed to bomb when we're firing from a drone. And Democrats made the decision over and over and over again to hit casualty-ridden sites. And how somehow
So this
we
is-
get in trouble the moment
This
that
board
Trump.
is a partisan board. It was all liberals on this board that you're talking about. I find that hard to
I
believe.
find that hard
It
to
was a
believe, too.
liberal
I think you're
choosing
making a
targets.
ridiculous decision. I don't think you're actually thinking
No,
this
I
through
would
logically.
I would probably guess that it was our Central Intelligence Agency that was.
They put forth
paramount.
targets. They do not choose whether or not a target gets hit.
But
So
they put
then-
forth
then
the
the
target?
president-
All
brings
right,
it
then
to
the president
committee.
goes like, wait, where? Oh, this one has a hospital.
Yes.
Let's bomb that one.
Yeah,
everybody.
for sure.
Actually,
Because
yes,
you
he
know
gets
that.
a list
Because
of
you
targets.
know that. Oh
He
my
gets
God.
Oh yeah, the hospitals. Let's target
Okay.
all the hospitals on the
So,
list.
let's try and get back on topic and have a conversation instead of a shouting match. But what
I mean, we're
Do
just
you
deaf.
think-
I'm sorry.
is
Yeah, I feel
a
that
better
too.
system than what we have? What's a better system than the democratic process?
Well, I think that a blended. I mean, you know, up north, it's a blended social system.
You're biased. Shut it.
Hey, you know what though?
No, I do want to hear. Yeah.
I mean,
And you know
I
what?
tend to support
Every
that.
country does, but we need to get back to this idea of splendid isolationism. You're afraid that we're moving away from the world stage. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's not
No,
a bad
tell
thing
me.
that
I
was
other
afraid of that.
Where isolation
No,
has
isolation
been
is
a
never-
benefit to the society that isolates and the world.
My point is maybe
There's
Yeah,
no
classic
backing away
Christian-
from the world
Classic
stage
Christians
is
being
now-
afraid of the apocalypse.
Okay, well, having Trump as your president is not backing away from the world stage. Now everyone's looking at us and criticizing us,
But
and we
no
look
Sure.
respect.
stupid.
They have
Everyone
no
was
respect.
looking at
Yes.
us anyway.
No, but we have zero
People laugh at us.
respect.
People don't care what we think.
We're
People don't like
we're
America.
clowns. We are clowns and other. We had respect under
You're
Obama
like
for
a
We had
sure.
we had a president that could say a full sentence.
Like a complete sentence
Honestly-
grammatically correct. too,
Honestly,
you know?
other countries
Okay, people
respected
love
us.
to-
Other countries liked us even. Other countries liked our leader. Now we have someone that makes us look like all clowns, and I personally am embarrassed. You should not be proud of your president.
I don't care.
You should be embarrassed.
Well, it's that very
Couldn't be
isolated
further
view
from it.
of yeah. I feel like a lot of times it tends to be a very myopic viewpoint of people who haven't spent a lot of time in other countries.
Yes. Oh my God. You
We're
don't know what you're talking. Have you ever like lived overseas?
Yes,
Honestly.
We're not
Yes, have
talking
you?
about other countries. We're talking about the United States of America.
is
So
actually-
what is right here?
I can't.
How could you
Are
have
you
a
serious?
perspective
United
outside
States
that
of
if you
America.
I mean, are you serious? Please answer. Are you
Yeah.
serious?
We keep
Okay,
Sorry.
hold on. What innovations is the rest of the world providing?
God,
What
so
innovation?
so many.
Look at Japan.
What was the last?
Oh my God.
You-
Okay,
what
fine.
you just
You got me
said
on Japan.
proves
You got
us
me on
right.
Japan.
Look at
You're
South
gonna win.
Korea.
Fine. No.
Gosh.
China
Wow.
steals our tech.
Wow.
Hold on.
It's a
Excuse
show.
it.
We're,
Don't you
losing,
dare.
we're losing the race
No,
on
no.
5G, for example.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you know, so South Korea has
Like,
more
there's
fiber
some
optic
your
line
internet
than
isn't fast
anywhere
enough
else. And
It isn't for
same
some of the
thing.
competing that we need.
So when we
Actually.
talk about innovation, you look at, I mean, different areas have different hotspots of innovation, and you look at how Macron, when what happened here with basically brain drain, where he said, hey, all you environmental study people, like, come over here, we'll give you visas. We look at how much of our country was started by foreigners. We look at, you know, Albert Einstein. You look at we wouldn't have Google, we wouldn't have eBay, we wouldn't have all of these. The Silicon Valley is foreigners.
Okay, so you're telling me right now, under a merit-based immigration policy, that we would turn away Albert Einstein?
Oh yeah. Because
No,
because
under
if you-
a merit-based. I'm sorry.
what is your
that
merit?
man-
What
I
is your
think
merit qualifications? Why? I mean,
You
what-
can
what-
take the quiz online if you've got the right qualifications, which in this case, in Albert Einstein's case, would be that he's a genius inventor. And that was known.
contributing to the Manhattan.
That's
No, but
there's
that was
no way
not before
that
he
under a
moved here.
merit-based system
That
we
wasn't
wouldn't
happening.
have taken that man.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
not
gonna-
the way that
I'm gonna-
works.
I'm gonna
Well,
agree
we
with you on
also
that.
would
I'm gonna
take
agree
him
with you on
because
that.
he was
the
European.
One of the people that I highlighted. How about the rest? How about all you know, the people that started like an Elon Musk or something?
Elon Musk isn't an American citizen. He's not doing anything for us. He's from South
Yes, he
Africa.
is.
Oh, really?
But if he wanted to move,
He's doing a lot for us.
I kind of feel like
Oh
you're
yeah,
saying a lot of bullshit.
oh yeah, and all
Like, I
the
don't
people
feel
that
like
have
you're
jobs
saying
at
that
Tesla. I
when
mean,
you
what?
say it. Why are we
That's-
even like considering the things that he's saying? Because it doesn't make sense. It has no logical basis.
okay,
Call
you're
me
talking
Musk.
about Elon Musk, someone who is not a citizen right now.
You just said Elon Musk had nothing to do with the United States.
No,
like,
I'm
economy.
telling
Do
you
not
that the
realize what
basis
you've
of
done?
your argument isn't sound. Because here's the thing.
Are you kidding
just
me?
told me that Elon Musk. You just compared Elon Musk to Albert Einstein.
So you're
For the
saying-
sake of a merit-based immigration system, we would take Elon Musk.
Would
You
we-
picked another example that doesn't suit your argument.
No, but okay. So under the current administration right now, based on him getting in, it's not about where he's at now.
Hey.
It's not about where Albert Einstein was at the pinnacle of his career. It's where he was when he came into the country.
True.
I think
True.
that we actually have the capability to look at people's potential.
I-
So
Well, no, no, let me-
why
okay,
then
okay.
put a limit
Let
on,
me-
on
let me-
immigration?
Let me say something about that. So merit based, but what do we consider merits? Okay. For example, when my lots of family have come to the United States, They're not looking at how they did at school. They're not looking at what their records were. They're looking at how much money they have. How fair is that?
Or their skin color.
No, actually,
We're talking
the
about a
system
time-
does
No.
talk about your education.
We're talking about a time right now.
No.
No, it was part of the.
Okay,
quiz. I took it.
talking about right
No,
now
no, where you took
with,
that quiz.
with
I took
white
the quiz online.
supremacists,
New
is
York
legit.
Times. I hate
Yeah.
white
that thing.
supremacists, and
Institute of
neo-Nazis.
Knowledge
It was
from
online.
Alec
It's
or
real.
something, right?
Hold on. No, the New York Times published the merit-based quiz, and everybody was allowed to take it. It involved me answering questions about
Okay.
my education.
All right.
Okay, but
And
the
that's
way
it?
that
And you
this
think that's
country,
it? You think that's it?
the way that this country is going as well, it's going to have to do with skin color because you have a borderline white nationalist in office right now. I would call him a white nationalist. He might not be a white supremacist, but he's definitely a nationalist, and he's supporting that, and he's not denouncing white nationalists, neo-Nazis, white
How
supremacists.
hard is it to say Nazis are bad?
You know?
How hard is it?
Almost.
There were good people on the left and the right side.
Almost as hard as it is for you people to admit that not every
You people-
person who voted for Donald Trump is a racist. You people, as in.
No,
yeah,
I'm not saying that
I'm
everybody's a
not saying-
racist and voted for Donald
Why
Trump.
did
I'm saying
didn't
you're
I just say
enabling a racist.
didn't I just say earlier that a bunch
Exactly.
of or the majority of Trump voters, not supporters, Trump voters were just putting up with him because he represented certain values that they were not willing to compromise.
You give a beer to an alcoholic, that doesn't make you an alcoholic.
Yeah, but you're assuming I'm voting for him for one reason or another without actually knowing why I
So
did.
why did you vote?
Only
I
30% of
I voted for Donald Trump because I'm sorry, I do not trust Hillary Clinton. She had 30 years of scandal, and she had taken more positions than the Karma Sutra on every single
Okay,
issue.
so you-
And I'm sorry, but when it comes to personal liberty and privacy, I do not think that she was the candidate to make sure that my privacy was being respected.
Okay,
she
so what
wanted
you're
to tear into
saying-
my emails, even though she's deleting 30,000 of hers.
Okay. But so you're basically saying you voted for Trump because no Hillary.
Isn't that why you voted for Hillary? Or people voted for Hillary because no Trump?
No.
So you're going with my.
So you're saying
You're
everybody who
supporting my
voted for
point
Hillary.
now. You're supporting my point because you're saying, well, you know, I voted for Trump because there was no better choice, kind of thing.
You know that.
I
that's his
didn't
original
vote for either
argument.
one because neither one of them were good.
A lot of people admit they felt like they were voting
That's
for
not-
the lesser
that's
of
not
two
right.
evils
That's
in the
not right.
So if
2016.
you voted for someone because he was the lesser of two evils, are you satisfied with his performance?
I think there's a lot of alarmism going off, and
Maybe-
a lot of
maybe
and
so,
I feel
but-
like that young people in specific always act. Whether it's the Vietnam War
Yes.
or right now, people our age always think that the world is about to end. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
never does. It never
Okay,
does.
but it's different.
Well, yeah,
I-
tell that
it's
to
true,
people
okay.
in
It's
Soviet
different
Russia.
for you.
Tell that to people
It's
in
different
all
for
sorts of
you
countries that have
because
collapsed.
you voted for him on this one issue.
Not
and
just that one
Okay,
issue, but-
you voted for him on multiple issues, right? Well, I didn't vote for him because he's racist, and that to me is a bigger negative
'Cause you
than
have
any
less to lose.
positive.
I'm
You have
sorry.
let-
And you
the
don't
thing is,
understand
Hillary
that,
Clinton
and you never
during the
could.
2016 election went on some Atlanta morning radio and
Hot
started hot
sauce in her
I'm
purse.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm
yeah.
sorry. If we really think that
That's a
Donald Trump-
Beyonce lyric, y'all. Chill.
Yes, and
reality
purposely
is
pulling it
you guys-
out of your purse to court a votership that ain't yours is racist.
It was a Beyonce lyric.
Yes, sorry.
It was pop
cultural
culture.
appropriation.
It was pop culture. Hot sauce
Cultural
is not
appropriation.
cultural.
So funny. I'm
Cultural
sorry.
appropriation.
Oh, no. Okay, let's talk about this honestly.
Where are you from? Like, what made you think this way?
Okay.
That's not cultural appropriation to quote lyrics from a current song. That's not cultural appropriation.
Well, when the
I would-
lyrics
I would-
from that song actually
About hot
reference
sauce in
a
a bag?
cultural
Okay,
thing.
let's remove the cultural pop culture from this.
Wait,
What
I'd like to
about-
also say, look
what
how you
about-
just spin this to Hillary Clinton real quick. And I was talking about Trump's racism.
It's hard.
And now we're talking about
It's hard to
Hillary
have a
Clinton.
conversation
I don't want to
because-
talk about Hillary
What
Clinton.
about- what
because
about
we're
this?
talking about your candidate that won, right? I don't want to talk about
We're
Hillary
talking
Clinton.
about it
I
'cause
want to
you're
talk
telling
about
me what
Donald
I
Trump.
have to say.
And I want to talk about how racist he is. And I want to talk about that that's more important to me than any of the good shit he
Then
could
how
do.
racist
Well, the
And it
Hillary
can't-
Clinton was apparently. I'm sorry, you might not remember the '90s with her
She did
super
use
predators.
Yes, I
Does
get it.
anyone remember that?
But are
I'm
we not
sorry.
still talking
Super
about
predators?
Trump?
That's why I didn't vote for either one of them. But that still
See,
doesn't mean that I'm able.
but only
But,
Donald was the
but still,
racist.
that doesn't mean that I'm going to like patch up everything that my candidate does wrong because that's exactly what you're doing.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing.
That's true.
You're not able to see
What
like
of the seven deadly sins does he not embody?
all of them. All of them.
No,
I would have to know what the
I mean,
seven
yeah,
deadly
he
sins
embodies
are.
all of
Yeah,
them.
and I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with American politics.
No, it has to do with the vote that he got, though, and
I
the
thought
irony
that
of
they
the
believe in the
evangelical
separation
vote
of church
coming
and
from-
state, but as soon as we actually start
Do you
talking
not?
morals, they pull freaking Catholicism, of all things.
Catholicism?
Well, I mean-
Catholicism is the only branch of Christianity that has the seven deadly sins, because Catholicism actually made a point of browbeating its worshippers to make sure they didn't go anywhere.
It's true.
It's actually the foundation of the Lutheran Church, nailing something to the door.
It's
No.
true.
Not doing that.
So,
Sorry,
so
but what
then
does this
how
have to
is
do
he
with you?
able to
I don't know.
capture so much of that Catholic vote? Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the irony of the.
That was my
ideology.
point.
Yeah, no, I'm supporting your point. That's.
I
agree.
think we're just because we're on the opposite end of the spectrum. That doesn't mean we disagree about people who are choosing the lesser of two evils. My point is, it's the system we have, and you have to make a choice.
I feel like we're just bitching to bitch. There's a lot of emotions, and we're not actually getting anywhere. So maybe if we put those emotions to the side for just a second and stop pointing fingers, we could actually discuss something.
Yes.
I
So
mean,
okay.
if-
So I understand your criticism towards me. I'll take it. You didn't vote. All right. My point was to use my freedom in a way that would demonstrate that I'm not happy with the electorate.
Show up and vote for
Elect-
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. See, you're not
How is that
having
helpful?
you're not having a conversation right now.
Like,
See,
No, no,
How-
no,
here's
but-
my attempt to have a reasonable conversation.
Okay, no,
with you, and
I'm having this conversation
Okay.
with you. You, as a protest vote, didn't vote.
yes.
You're voting for the winning candidate.
Yes.
No matter
Perhaps.
what. No matter
Perhaps,
what.
yeah.
I'm
Perhaps.
just.
Hey, and I'm not the one over bitching about it, but I'm saying we still need to have the conversation. Just because the candidate that I elected is the one that got elected, it means I'm not gonna criticize him, and it does not mean that I'm going to recognize all the things that were wrong with him.
Yeah, I think
to
you need
begin
to
with,
balance it there.
especially when you bring up things like, oh, well, I voted him because I can't vote for Hillary.
It wasn't just
You-
that, but I get your point.
Well, and it's the same thing. Like, I was adamantly against the drone program, and there's a lot of liberals that do not support war in general.
Yes.
And that was a big thing that we're like one of my biggest contentions with Hillary Clinton is her Kissinger style of foreign policy. But I look at the current foreign policy and it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening, especially with North Korea, and especially with the broader world in general in terms of our relationships, because our relationships with some of our closest allies are really stressed right now.
Yeah.
Well, relationships need to be redefined when they become unhealthy.
I'm serious. Dependence.
Yeah, but who
Redefine.
who
Do
has
you
had
think
the
Italy
history
wants us in
throughout?
their country? Do you think Germany wants us into their country? Do you think South Korea wants us in their country? We are everywhere. Do you think they're happy about that?
We have a
I
really
was
bad
stationed-
history of taking
I was
advantage of
stationed in
everybody
Italy.
else.
I
So
was
it's
stationed
like,
in Iraq. I was stationed in Qatar. I know firsthand that they do not want us there.
No.
But South Korea does.
No, North
No,
Korea
no,
and South
exactly.
Korea are working things out.
That's one of
Yeah,
the
no.
reasons I voted for Trump, because he campaigned on this idea of
Wait.
these other
North Korea and
countries
South
support
Korea are
themselves.
working things
They're
out.
moving the
What was the
lines.
outside influence that actually sparked talks?
Not your
Go
piece
ahead.
of shit.
You think Trump changed the world? Do you think Trump is the reason why they're?
You
I'm sorry,
honestly-
did North Korea and South Korea start making nice when Obama was president?
It seems like you're kind of idolizing the president as some sort of god.
Negotiations have been happening for much
mean,
longer than.
Yes,
it's been
and they
announced.
didn't go anywhere.
No, they were actually.
No, it's a
they
very
were
slow.
going-
It's a very slow process.
Trump is not the
It
reason
was-
why
it
they
was
are making
actually-
amends.
So it was Un's sister when she went for the Olympic Games in South Korea. That was the major turning point of.
There's a lot more in
the
the world than
conversation.
America, believe it or not.
That right there when she went and talked with Moon, that was that was huge.
That was huge, but do you know what else is huge? A nuclear arsenal pointed at you.
Huge.
I'm sorry.
Huge.
We hit a point
It's really
where North Korea
huge.
stopped playing the big dick games.
Huge.
I would
Make
disagree. I would
Tyler
say
Wayne
that
talk
they've,
so we can
they've
talk about politics.
established their competency.
It's funny.
So at this point, they don't feel the
Ironic.
need to pursue that any further. They haven't.
Huge.
How many weapons have they gotten rid of? I mean, you look at it and it's like, hey, okay, you can talk all you want, but until there's like pen to paper and there's an agreement.
Yeah,
it's
there
not
hasn't been
shit,
anything.
Okay,
you know?
so she says that North Korea and South Korea are making nice, and that's happening during my president's term, and I say that he has some responsibility in that, and you immediately say, no, North Korea and South Korea aren't making nice.
No, we didn't say
What?
that.
They're
No,
not
at no point
making
did I
it, but
say
they've been
sorry.
making progress for a long time. Very slow, but they've been making progress. Now this guy comes along and he just wants to take credit for it.
Yeah, if you build a road and I fix a pothole, I don't claim that I built the whole road.
True.
No, but if you prevent an accident because you patch that pothole, you absolutely take responsibility
about
for
the things
preventing that
So
accident.
Think
he
about the
prevented
things that
a
Rex
World
Tillerson
War
said about
with
this guy.
Korea that he was
Think about that.
Okay, you're accusing him of idealizing Trump, but you will not give Trump an ounce of the credit that he deserves sometimes.
Deserves for
Well, he
what?
deserves what?
Removing ourselves from the Paris Agreement.
I
is-
don't
I
give
think
him
That's not a
credit.
good thing.
That's
I'm
idiotic.
sorry, I disagree. We were picking up too much of the bill for that, and
There's
Donald
no
Trump
cost,
is telling.
and it's fucking voluntary. Like there's no there's no cost.
And we're
Voluntary for
volunteering.
me?
We're
Because I
volunteering
didn't
to let
vote
the rest of the world pick up some slack. I thought liberals hate this idea of America policing the world, and as soon as we say,
We were
hey,
not really
No, they
policing
were
the world.
doing
We
it
were trying to be the
agreement.
example. We were trying to lead the world in that direction.
Now, you say that we were trying to be the example, but the fact of the matter is Barack Obama wore a smile and killed thousands of innocent people with his drone program.
there you
And
go.
again,
Talking
What
about-
about
it
Obama?
matters.
Can you please
It
lower your
matters.
voice, sweetie? Because it really does hurt my ears. Thank you.
okay, I think we need to.
No.
I think we need to get back to the question at hand. 2000 versus 2016.
I'm gonna
And I
get you a
think it-
trophy
just
for the person.
Just for the sake of argument and remembering this is a question about the 2016 election, it's not fair to hop on us when we mention Hillary Clinton because she was an amazing factor in the 2016 election. She was the face of a major party. So.
Right, but we're asking why are we still talking about his winning and how close it was and all of that compared.
Because it's political football, like every.
Yeah, but why
other
are we still
single
talking
No, but I
about
think
it?
that's
Political
like,
football.
I can agree with that.
But we're not talking about that. The Democrats are not talking about that.
Really?
We lost. We're talking about that we lost. Yes.
Fair and
But there's
Oh, really?
there's
Fair and
someone in
square?
office who's
Fair? Wait. Fair,
ahead.
Fair and square.
fair and square. You
So-
show up, you campaign.
So you're saying that the
You
campaign
don't, you
violation that hid the prostitute, that's fair?
Okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I
If
got
the
paid
prostitute
out
had
to
come
liquor.
out, it's
And then
possible that
paid
would
it
have
back
influenced the
with
election.
what-
That's all
I'm
gonna
sorry,
say.
I don't like
Why are you
the
so
misstep to
passionate
begin with.
about and so negative and
Before-
so like?
It
that-
is very
actually,
possible. It
I
is
really-
very-
I recommend you look into Gary Hart and what happened with him, because that
Apparently,
parallel,
people were willing to forgive Trump for something we weren't willing to forgive Gary Hart for. It's
No, they didn't even have an option to forgive him or not because all of this was hidden.
exactly.
Yeah, it is
You can't
very,
say
it is,
that, like,
it is
oh,
extremely
I have a
possible
question.
that if that had
Do
come
you
out
think
before the
Stormy
election,
Daniels
it
getting
would have
a hush
affected
money
the
payment would have
elections
changed
enough
the
that
minds?
Absolutely.
they would have resulted in
Oh
the
yeah,
way
that's
It
exactly what
seems
happened
to
to
me
Gary
that
Hart.
I'm sorry,
That's exactly
but
what
if the
happened.
pussy
Trump's
grabbing
voters
cake
don't
didn't
care
change
that he has
minds.
affairs.
And that's very
But if the
dangerous.
pussy grabbing conversation
That
did
hurts.
change minds,
No,
and
no,
you
no.
combine
It
that
is very
with
dangerous because that
the
makes you
other.
There's
that makes you
like
feel
five
like the
of us
point that
talking,
you
it's like
made
a view.
before was very true. He could shoot somebody in the middle of town square and people would still vote for him. What does that say about our
Yes,
current
he
system?
didn't
you know what?
shoot somebody. He had an affair with a porn star.
Yeah, but if
Your hyperbole is not serving, and you call me on my
Okay, what about
hyperbole,
the
why can't I
time?
call you?
I mean,
But
of course
think
he
about it.
didn't
He
shoot
said it
someone.
himself. But I'm just saying that could have affected the election a lot. It could have.
People
Possibly.
on this side of the political spectrum believe in personal liberty. If this
How?
man,
What? Personal liberty?
that's what the whole.
Right.
I,
For real?
would you want to let someone
Personal
finish?
liberty?
Except
I
for
mean,
them
I'm
gays.
just saying. What I like to.
Okay. let
Y'all
me
are
finish.
stomping all over everybody talking.
Yeah.
Seriously,
I
kind
can't
of
get a word
embarrassing. I don't think this is how PhD candidates should act.
Personal.
Well, I don't have one yet, so.
I don't.
I'm
Y'all don't
Candidate.
believe in personal liberty. You want to have control over
Talking
women's
about
bodies.
the person
point
who's
is
making
you want-
personal
That's
attacks,
not my
by the
point.
way.
If you,
You can
let
talk
someone
about
have
Haven't
it.
a
done it
point,
once.
What is
You
your
can talk
point?
about
I
it.
haven't attacked him. I haven't attacked you. I haven't
I haven't
attacked you.
attacked
I haven't
anyone.
attacked
What is
you.
your point?
You
My
attack
point-
both of us all the time.
What did I
you
say?
recognize that this is
I'm
a
sorry.
difference.
What did I
I'm a
say?
Julius doctorate candidate. I'm litigating. You're arguing.
No,
My
can you tell me
point
what I
is
said?
that
That
She's not
this is
attacking-
how
she might be attacking your ego.
That we're
personal.
childish.
My
Yeah,
point.
you said insulting things, and I haven't done that to you.
When?
I haven't done that to you.
Have I done
and
that
I
to
haven't
you?
Done, no.
Okay,
No,
good.
I'm
Okay.
calling her
No, okay, I'm just
specifically.
trying
I
to
You're taking
clarify
it
it.
personally because I was talking about the.
Can I please make my point
What's your point?
regarding personal
No!
liberty?
Ladies and
Regarding-
gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, your points are all very valid. But in a democracy, one needs to let one hear one's opinion
Thank
and
you.
then the other opinion
Thank you.
comes in. If you talk over one another, no one gets the message.
But it's so fun.
I was just saying, say that to him.
Because I think I just said that and I got like lambasted
And
for
I
it.
think that's why I'm
Thank you.
the mediator
Thank
at this
you.
point for you.
More than
So
welcome.
So
Hang
can I
out.
get the floor for an entire statement?
for
Yeah,
an entire
for
statement.
once.
All right, guys. Let's. Okay, let's.
Well,
give it
Okay,
a
wait.
go.
My
Okay.
question was about Stormy Daniels and whether or not you think that if that had been a point during the election instead of after it, would it have really changed minds? I don't think so. Conservatives believe in the idea of personal liberty. And that means that if this guy who's running for president wants to have an affair with this porn star, that's his business, not mine.
Really? Oh, then how about homosexual behavior behind closed doors?
Or abortion.
I mean, Donald Trump was not my first choice.
Sweetheart,
I was
that's
there
not your
for-
fallback every time. You have to actually have an opinion.
Well, if you're I'm about to tell you what my opinion is. If you're asking me about my personal opinion regarding homosexuality and abortion, if you don't want an abortion, don't have one. If you're not gay, don't get gay married. If you are gay, get gay married. I don't care. I don't care.
But
It's
you voted
personal
for
liberty.
someone that has ideology that opposes your viewpoint. Then.
I haven't seen that represented in any policy that he's enacted
What?
or campaigned on. When did he
Well,
say
no, he
that
campaigned on it.
When did he campaign saying that he wanted to overturn the Supreme Court decision from 2015 allowing gay marriage? I don't think he ever said anything even close to the same.
Okay,
What
but-
about
He
abortion?
hasn't gone after.
So that doesn't mean he
What
hasn't
about
done
abortion?
anything?
I thought he confirmed Gorsuch because Gorsuch said that statute should be upheld of Roe v. Wade.
Okay, what about choosing Mike Pence, who has an extremely strong stance against gay people?
I mean, if the office of
Yeah,
vice president
absolutely.
actually held any power, then maybe I'd be more
It
concerned.
doesn't. That's not the point, though. It doesn't matter if it holds
What is
power
the
or
point?
not. The point is that he appointed him. He chose him. That means that he agrees with his beliefs.
Donald Trump actually makes fun of Mike Pence for that.
We
a lot.
all work on. We all have to work with people that we don't agree with on everything. I have
Okay, but-
never had a single political candidate represent everything I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, but
And it's
he
never
appointed.
gonna happen.
He chose a whole
Okay.
group of
Never
his
gonna happen.
friends.
But it could get closer.
Well, you know, and I guess
You don't
it
think so?
comes down to like the.
Are you that pessimistic?
Morality. You know, the
No.
concept of morality and it's.
Then let's not
it's,
fix anything.
It's interesting, you know, when you have a candidate. I mean, it really goes back to like my kind of analogy of like, you know, you might not be an alcoholic, but if you give that alcoholic a beer, that makes you an enabler. But you just because you're not an alcoholic doesn't mean that person is not gonna crash their car because they're drunk. I mean, you know that you're like, oh well, because I don't hold these policy views, it doesn't matter if I elect someone who does.
I don't believe
All
that
of
he
this
holds
is
it.
very refreshing, clearly, and a little bit of alcohol clearly makes me want to have a refreshment as well. I think you all deserve a break, and literally, I love the debate, the fire, the fury. It's making life much more tolerable in this classroom. So, take a break.
Fire and Fury been released
like that
in
question
China.
better.
Well, I mean, for one reason, they don't have a free press. They don't have the same free speech that we have in this great country.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they have to withstand a certain belief system, and they control that in a certain way, and so maybe it is a lack of freedom of press. Yeah.
It might have to do with the fact that there is a lot of criticism towards this president in the book, and sometimes he portrays a lot of the same qualities that their leader has as well, and so that could, in a way, like open the eyes for a lot of people in a way that they don't want it to be open.
Could it also just be for their dislike of him?
It might not sell out there, you think?
Yeah.
Well, that's the
If
thing.
they
This is
disliked
like-
him,
translate,
this
yeah.
book would probably do pretty well, don't you think? I mean, it's
an
nothing but a
anti-Trump.
hack job.
Yeah, it's just an alarmist spewing out worst case scenarios and cherry picked stats.
Well, my brother actually lives in China, and he married a Chinese woman, and they have a baby together. And he repeatedly tells me that they don't consider America how we consider America. They don't look at us in the esteem that we hold ourselves.
Oh,
I
yeah,
wonder if that would
believe
have been
that
true
for sure.
70 years ago.
No, well, that's irrelevant, really, isn't it?
It is irrelevant.
It's
But we haven't changed our position as this since Woodrow Wilson put forward this idea of America policing the world. We've always been on the hook for every single issue, domestic or foreign.
We've been the largest power.
Well, I mean,
I don't
look
know that I
at
agree
us.
with that.
Of course they would say that because it's fact.
Yeah.
okay. So, how much responsibility for the world do you want to take? I mean, my personal opinion is they're probably not launching the book because they have an interest in being nice. And this is the first time in a long time countries all over the planet have had an interest in being nice when they show up to the table, as opposed to
Let's
I
see
don't
how
know.
much we
That,
can
that actually
squeeze
reminds
for.
me of something. The Chinese culture is very collectivistic, right? And the United States is very individualistic. And so to have something like this, which is really a product of our individualistic society in a collectivistic society, which is obviously working very well for them, from what I've been told from my brother who lives there and from other sources, would this promote something that they don't want to pollute their culture? And this is maybe pollution for them.
Well, I think, I wonder if the translation had anything to do with why it wasn't released. This is a lot of first-hand accounts, and sometimes translating things into another language can be a bit difficult to get the nuance of the actual conversation, which could cause a larger problem on a geopolitical scale if there's stuff in there that they mistranslate or whatever.
I think it could be. I'm sticking by the theory that it's probably just dangerous, or their government esteems it as dangerous for the people because they are seeing the open criticism of a president, and they certainly don't want that for their president. You know
I
what mean?
wouldn't
like
say
they're trying to stay away
But they're
from.
not ignorant. I mean, look at social media. It's
Yeah, but they
No,
have
it-
they have a
social
limited
media
they have a
there is-
limited
it is
accent.
completely
It is
different.
Yeah.
You don't
very
think they're aware of
They have a
American
diff-
pop culture and politics? And
Oh, no,
they
that's
have,
what Americans
they have a
do.
very
Number one
limited
expert.
access to the internet.
So they really know nothing about what's going on here.
Not as much as
Well, they know
Other
the
countries.
I'd say they
perspective
know
view.
as much about America as the average American knows about China.
Or
which
more.
is probably not.
No,
that
I
much.
think that Americans are extremely, maybe not the people in this room, but I think most Americans are extremely ignorant, not just of other countries, but of our own country.
I'll say
Yeah.
this: their citizens know as much about America as their government will allow them to know.
Well,
You know
we're,
what I mean?
we're,
You can
we're
say that
assuming
about just
that.
about
We're
anywhere.
assuming
No, I
that.
mean,
I understand that they shape media in a way that will continue the growth of their ideological
crazy.
society.
It's crazy
But that
how
doesn't
much they
necessarily mean that
censor
they don't
everything.
know everything. You can't make those assumptions.
if we're talking.
it's not an assumption.
Well, no,
the
it's obviously.
I know,
it was-
I
they
just said that they do
censor it
that,
like
but that doesn't
crazy.
mean that they don't have an educated understanding of our world and our culture in some ways that are better and more objective than we have because we're so involved
Oh,
in it. We
absolutely.
can't
I'm
see
sorry.
outside.
What you call ethnocentrism, I call pride. I mean, we've been the gold standard. Everyone wants to come here. We're leading the world on almost every issue. Like,
I don't know.
I'm not
about
saying
that.
we're
Well,
the
in
most.
prison-
And the
Of,
idea
uh,
that this book is somehow going to poison their collectivism. I mean,
It's
no,
poisoning
the book
ours.
is scraping the bottom of the barrel
Yeah.
and meant to make us look as bad as possible.
I
And meant to
don't
make
agree
a
with that.
president look as bad as
I don't
possible.
I
agree
kinda
with that
envy them.
either.
So
This is just an account of someone who was in the White House.
we'll agree to disagree on
Well,
that.
I
But
mean, you
can
know-
we
What
just
do you-
can,
what- what do you-
can
how
we
would you
agree
describe
that
that?
this book is negative?
What would you?
Can
what
we
do
agree
you?
that this book is not
It's a
praise ridden? That
Read-
it is not seeking to
I don't think-
It's just
bolster
an
Donald
account.
Trump?
Yeah, I don't
It's
think
just
it's
an
praise
account.
written, but it's
It's a first-hand
So-
account of in the White
But-
House.
Okay,
that's why-
so which
but that's
most
why I'm
people are
saying it's
is
dangerous.
negative.
That-
Well, okay, so
Well,
I would say it's dangerous
if
for
the
the
shoe
Chinese people.
fits.
well, so it's dangerous for the Chinese people in that okay, some people are critiquing our president, which is
Yes.
maybe something they don't want.
But they're
but
not
that
allowed to
doesn't.
do.
But with this book being so negative, I don't see why they're scared of that. I mean,
So-
all this book is going to do is make us look bad.
Well, then you
Well,
tell
hey,
us your
look
reasonings.
at-
Why do you think they haven't published it?
Because it actually matters whether or not Trump likes.
It what?
Trump actually does prioritize leaders who make a point of showing up with some politeness to America.
He values
For politeness to
loyalty.
him. And you
Because-
know, the thing is...
Because-
That's a mob mentality
Because
there.
Kim Jong Un was so polite to him before.
Yeah.
So okay, here's the thing though. So
Yes,
so
sorry.
but China has been polite to him.
look, they censor things like like Winnie the Pooh. Because there's been a correlation between the president's likeness and Winnie the Pooh. So you can't, like, Christopher Robin wasn't even released there. So, you know, there might be one thing inside of there that they say, no, we don't want it, so no.
I have to
And
say,
it's that extreme censorship, you know, regardless of the reason, that wouldn't happen in this country, regardless of who wrote it and regardless of how damning it is to one side or the other, they have that freedom.
Don't disagree with Lick on that.
yeah, no, I
You
don't
know, and I do. I think that's like one of the most critical elements of society here is that we do have the free speech. We do have the ability. You know, and that's hard because there's a hard line between having free speech and inviting hate speech. You know, and so that's when it comes to free speech, it's a hard line to draw. But I think it's always safer to err on the side of freedom as long as it doesn't encroach upon other people's rights.
There's something that I think in my head sometimes, and I don't like to say it out loud because I know it sounds bad, but it's how I feel, or maybe at least it's something that I think maybe we should consider, is Chinese education system, from what I understand, is a lot better than ours.
Math and sciences they give us.
So, and
STEM. Yeah.
our nation is extremely uneducated. Yes or no?
Yes, our
Yeah.
education
Yes.
system is
Especially in
failing.
relation
Yes,
to other
yes.
countries, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know. Let's put that on the table. Let's see how that
So,
works.
and-
Let's make that a part of the discussion. If we all just agreed, uneducated compared to this other country, is their way of doing things, even though it's just so sacrilegious to our way of doing things, is that necessary bad? Because maybe it's working.
No, but
their
but the-
education is limited. They are great at the math and sciences, and that's why they are making strides.
And the humanities.
But there are a bunch of things they're not.
What do you consider the humanities?
Well, I mean, they have limited access to the information about other countries and about their history as well, which
Yeah, or even their
part of
own.
it.
I mean, look at the censorship of events that have happened inside China. Look at Tibet. I mean, you know, there's a lot of examples there of that persecution.
Yeah, their algebra is great.
And their
But when you're-
technology?
Well,
Their
Tech.
but it's the manufacturing of technology. I mean, the technology is really coming from
Yeah.
Japan
No,
and
I
countries
think
like
that
Canada.
they're innovators.
Well, calling them innovators
I
when
don't
we
know.
catch them stealing our tech.
What are you talking about?
What are you
Oh,
talking
they're-
about?
Our
I
stealth
mean, all the
program.
think of all the off brands that
Do you
come
not
from
think
China
that
that are
we've
all
stolen
inspired
drones from the sky and used that technology?
No,
What do you
we're the
think
ones
happened
that
in World War
innovated
II?
it.
innovated.
World War II. It's the exact same thing.
Okay, there's a difference between stealing technology in wartime.
Yeah, if we're in war, I mean, I think that's considerably different if you're at war with someone and
Because
trying,
it's an
you know, like
active
a.
war to steal, say,
But
secrets.
did it not advance our technology in some way or another?
Yeah.
Isn't that what
China
we're talking
steals?
about?
So if
So
China,
tell
is,
me about
we're
the
at war
Chinese-
with China, I
Tell
don't
me
get.
about what happened with the Chinese and you said the stealth bomber?
So we
Isn't
had
that a wartime machine?
No, but
yes,
they've
exactly.
stolen-
They steal war tech from us
Not just
during
that though.
peacetime.
You know, so it's a lot of intellectual property.
Is it really peacetime?
We're
Think
not
about what's happening
shooting at
because
each
we
other.
occupy so much of the world, and we think that just
With
what handy-dandy and
China,
everything's
we are
fine.
not at war
And,
with China.
Well, China has allies.
I mean, I
China
completely
has
agree
allies,
with you.
and we occupy those allies, and those people, those countries don't want us there, and we think we're so sweet and innocent, and we're so. We think everybody wants to be us, and we're doing it right, but it's not necessarily true.
What
Hold on.
country are you referring to?
I'm sorry.
They're allies?
Wait, it sounds like
where
you
are
might
you?
actually
You don't know
like
what- you don't
America
know where our-
first.
No, I'm curious,
because
I'm
if your
curious,
goal
I'm
is
not
to
telling
get
you.
us out of
Hold on, I
everywhere
can't hear you.
else,
What was that? Please tell me.
I'm curious. I'm not challenging you on this.
Right.
What country are you referring to? Though?
What country? What are there allies, or what
That,
country
that
are we
are
occupying?
allies of China that we are occupying.
Well, we're occupying. Who are the allies of China? Let's talk about that, and then we'll say.
you made a statement to start
I know,
with that
I
we
know.
are occupying allies of
I
China, and
know.
we're supposed
Is
to
it
take you at his
possible?
word.
Is it possible that China
We've
has
gotten
alliance
so-
relationships with other countries that
Are you
we are
referring to
occupying? Is
Taiwan?
that possible?
Is that possible?
Are you
You
referring to
stated it as
Taiwan?
fact 2 minutes
What?
ago.
Okay.
we're-
Is any country in the European Union tied with China whatsoever? Yes or no? Does anybody know?
Economically,
You are the one who
Yes.
stated that we are occupying. Walk that
I'm
back
having
and
a
I will have
discussion
Europe.
with you. Please answer my question, yes or no. Does China have any sort of alliance with any country in the European Union?
That's
They're
the-
actually
Economically,
moving
yes,
towards
but
some-
they're allies.
Economically,
but
yes.
allies that we're
Yes,
occupying.
the world is no longer run by military
we're not
strength. The world is run by
occupying
I'm
any
sorry.
GDP.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I agree with you on most things, but I don't think I can agree with
No.
on this one.
foreign countries right now.
Yes,
that-
we are. Do you know the number of military members who live overseas?
No, I mean,
Yes,
but, you know,
but
that's
our
not,
base
that's
in
not,
Germany isn't an occupation.
What do
Yeah.
you call it? What would happen if Germans came over here and opened up a base?
If we invited them,
If we
What would
invited
happen?
them and we negotiated the terms of them
Yes.
Do you
having
think
a
Germans want us
strategic
there?
base here,
Do you think Germans want us there?
yes, that's why
Do you think
we're
Italians
there.
want
We're
us
there
there?
for a shield against
What
Russia.
about
Yeah,
South
we're-
Korea?
This came together under NATO. That's not confusing.
I
And
think
South
there's-
Korea actually does want us there because they are terrified of the North. Whether or not the
No,
North
they're not.
nukes
They're
them.
actually working together. And who is it our job to be there and to police that country? Really?
I'm the one who's arguing it's not. America first, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for
You
joining
think
the
it is
argument.
America?
Very,
first?
very feisty debate. Very feisty. You know, our question was, there was
Thank
a
you.
book
Thank
that
you.
has been written and it has been translated, but yet it has not been released. That same fire that is inside of you, wanting to give your points, is very important. Maybe be released into a country. But like any other country, we need to have civilized debate. When we talk over each other, when we don't let another point of view come into ours, then we put up that wall. And there's so many walls being built.
But not the right one.
So, think of that civility. Bring it into your conversation. Let me hear from you.
I don't agree.
Don't agree.
What don't you agree about?
You would rather
I say?
talk over everyone, yes? Because the point
No.
won't get across.
Oh, he doesn't agree with me, but I
No,
was asking
I-
what he doesn't agree with.
I don't agree that we are occupying other countries.
What would
right
you
now.
call it then? If Germany or South Korea, if they came over here and all these
That's
young
called alliance.
let me talk. The professor just said that we should talk, and I'm actually talking.
I think that it's
So
not.
hold on, I'm still talking. So if a bunch of young 20-year-old Koreans came over and lived and built a huge base outside of where we live, and they came to our restaurants and they came to our bars and they pissed in the streets and they ravaged our local economy, but at the same time, it's because we want them to be there. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's accurate? Do you think we would really want them to be here?
I'm sorry, but this is a
Can I answer
hypothetical
this
that I'm
one?
not willing to entertain because it's just never going to come to fruition.
Well,
it's never
Why
going
wouldn't it
not-
come
it's
to
not a-
fruition?
And because
beyond-
it would take the next 7 outside of the U.S., it would take the next 7 militaries just
It's
to
not-
have the same size and force.
It's
as
not a
ours.
hypothetical, it's a comparison that
It-
she's
yeah.
making
Has it
because
happened?
we're talking about
Why not?
occupying
It's
other
hypothetical.
countries and whether they want us there or not. And so she's
Okay,
making the comparison.
occupation requires going against the sovereignty of that nation. We
Let's
are
use a
there
different word.
with.
Let's not say occupy. We are currently there.
We are
Can we talk
debating.
about-
We are at the chains
Can we
of
talk about the
Civility,
shore?
ladies and gentlemen, is exactly where we just start spiraling out of control.
Okay.
Just like where we're at in the world right now, it seems spiraling out of control because no one wants to listen to one another.
Okay.
Can
I
we
have a
talk
question
about-
for the professor. Is there a difference between placing a military platoon in a country with their express permission versus somebody invading your country and setting up a base without your permission? One is occupation. One is allianceship.
But there's also quite a bit. I mean, you look at colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
You look at how that happened. You look at clearly just wanting to occupy for whatever reason. Could it be because you wanted to take materials from that country? Did you want to do a humanitarian effort in that country by bringing forth
We're in Germany
goodwill?
because of NATO, so yeah, that
To
was
support
good.
We're
war.
in Germany
To
because
support
of
war, and
NATO.
for what reason?
We're in Germany because of NATO to defend Germany against the possibility of a hostile Russia. This is not the British Raj robbing India of resources. This is the strongest military in the world protecting her allies on their
You don't think
invitation.
German soldiers can protect themselves?
I
Great
think
job
that
at
they
that.
can't do it
Against
as well as
Russia.
the
When did we
American military
When did we
can.
go into
Against
Germany?
Ru-
Let's start there.
When did we
we go
leave?
into Germany?
Would
We
be an
went
easier
into
question.
Germany post World War II
Why?
with the NATO
okay,
agreements.
okay. I'm sorry. So you just said that
Well,
we
no,
went into
I
Germany
don't
post
believe
World
that-
War II. Why did we go into Germany post World War II? What happened? Who won that war?
Okay.
Who won that war? If we hadn't won that war, do you think we'd be there?
I think China would
Do
be
you
here if
think
we had-
we'd be here if we hadn't beaten the Nazis?
That's
I'm
a
sorry, I'm
very
not
good
confused.
Actually,
question. Let's
yes, we
discuss
would.
that further.
We would, because Hitler's view for the world was that he gets the Eastern Hemisphere and America would have gotten the Western Hemisphere. He was afraid of America's involvement in World War II before they entered as a belligerent after what happened in World War I with the what's the
Well,
telegram that brought us
Even
into the
still,
war?
and I'm sorry to
Zimmerman.
cut you
The
off, but I
Zimmerman
just feel like maybe we
yes.
need to focus on the topic. Perhaps it's my fault that we got off topic, but the question was, and maybe we should all reiterate it so we're on the same page. Why wasn't this book published in China?
I don't know why it wasn't
I already
published in
made my
China.
point.
Yeah, I already made
You
mine.
think it's because of media censorship?
Yes.
I think it has a lot to do with the freedom of the press and the First Amendment that we have here that is not the same standard in China, but honestly, I envy them that they don't have to tolerate this book on the shelves because it's just a political hack job. It was written by an opportunist who just wanted to make a dime, and he thought that it'd be easy to stir up all these liberals who are complaining that the world's ending, even though it seems to be spinning just as normal as ever.
Well, let's take the hint that the professor dropped when he walked in here, right? I'm sure we all heard it. Building of the walls. First, I think Mexico, right? But we're not talking about Mexico. So if he mentions building of the wall in quote unquote italics, then how can we relate that to publishing this book in China?
'Cause
Is
they
it possible, going back to the collectivistic idea, that something like this would start to divide people? And division is not necessarily always a good thing.
That's a valid point.
I was gonna
would-
joke about
I think
it, but-
division. I think that's very true, and I think that's it's you look at the difference there between our country and theirs. In this country, that the platform was built on division. You know, it was us versus them, and that's something that they try to avoid in China, and it for not only for that collectivism, but it's protectionist for the people in power.
I've seen videos where people can park their bikes outside of coffee shops and not have to lock them up. people can be inside the coffee shop and walk away to the bathroom and leave their laptop on the table. And they open doors for each other. They're extremely polite to each other. They stand off to the right so that people can use the left of the elevator to walk. Americans would never do that. We're too
Wait,
self-centered.
did you say
we're
I
too
watched
narcissistic.
videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
Media,
interesting.
have you heard about it? It's connecting the
That's
world.
interesting how just a video, because when you have control of the media, you can usually
Do
use it to
whatever you
portray
want with
whatever
it.
you want to other countries. Look at our country; it's so great. Blah, blah,
So
blah.
you think
Well-
that videos are all just a fallacy? We should no longer use them as
No,
any
but
sort
You
of
know,
It's
I do not.
propaganda.
I will tell you this.
Yeah,
I do
and-
not trust the media from China. No,
And,
when it's
beyond
state
that-
run, no, I do not trust the media from Russia either. When it's state run, absolutely
Don't you
not.
think
And
you're a little
by
bit
that-
too passionate about something that you also really don't know anything about?
I have a question
and
for
I
you.
can be passionate
Is-
about the fact that it's not valid.
That's
Is-
not valid. You don't know just as much as I don't know.
I have a question, and this does go to the validity of your statement. Is being able to leave your iPad out, is having people step to the side on the staircase worth having re-education camps? Because we are talking about China.
Re-education camps.
Oh yeah.
Please inform.
Well, it's like it's
So political
programs.
I mean,
dissidents
yeah.
end up in a place where they receive a curriculum that brings them back into line with the Chinese mainstream. You're talking about our country being divided.
Look at their
What
treatment of
that
Muslims.
that kind of unity is not something I want.
You're being ethnocentric though, because is it necessarily a bad thing?
Well, I mean,
Re-education
what's happening
centers?
right now-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why?
Do you know what they're doing
when
to Muslims
somebody
in China?
makes
No,
a
I genuinely
complaint,
want to know why.
when somebody makes a complaint about their living conditions or the rights they receive, and you get
Or
sent
which
to
God they
prison
worship.
or to somewhere where you
And this
learn
happens in
not
China?
to. Yes, it does.
Do you know what's
Yes,
happening in
does.
China right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're gathering up
Good
the
job.
Muslims in
What do you
China,
mean,
too.
good job? I'm listening to you. Can I get a thank you?
How about you apologize for the statement where you say our division isn't good for us and China's unity is great, where you're talking about a country that takes away people's rights to have that unity.
Because I set an idea on the table to discuss does not necessarily mean that I'm a complete advocate of that idea. It's something that we should consider so that we can grow in our opinions.
Well,
I considered
Well,
it,
so, I
and
mean,
I decided
I get the
that
fact
wasn't
that-
worthwhile. And
But
the
why
thing
are-
is, that's not worthwhile to begin with. If you can send someone to prison over writing a book like this,
or which God that they worship.
that is nothing that I want anything to do with. That unity is not worth it. That unity is a lie.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
I
you're
get.
right.
I mean, I get.
But
part
there's no
of
such
that.
thing as a perfect system. So where we maybe our flaws, we have flaws, they have flaws. How can we understand those flaws better so that we can all
Okay,
grow?
I can go with that. Yes, there might be things that we can learn from them, perhaps, and
Thank you.
perhaps we have been a little bit too close-minded to
Yes.
think there's nothing to learn from them. There is absolutely nothing we can get from them because of the bad things. Yes, but at the same time we have to be careful and we have to not raise up this society all of a sudden because it's not ours and say, well, they're doing so great and they're so well educated.
Oh, I
they
never
must be
did
doing
that.
everything.
There must
Yes.
have been a
But
form of
the-
miscommunication.
Well, and
but
that's
we never
another
said
thing.
that.
And that's another thing that I was going to bring up to the table. It is extremely important that we become even more careful about how we express our ideas because a
Or
lot
how
of
we understand them.
yes, fair, absolutely. But that's almost like blaming another person for getting hurt when you offend them.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe you don't
I-
think so. But I'm stating that it's possible that we could express things a little bit better and be very, very certain that we are using the correct words to express our opinion. Because otherwise, we run into the problem that you had earlier, where you're like almost backing out of your argument.
I never said China was the best country, though.
Well,
so
but
I'm
you
not
were,
sure
but
where
you
got
were
that
almost
from.
backing out of your argument. You know what I mean?
I never backed
and you
out
were
of
like,
it
okay,
because
maybe
you assumed that because I said it, and that's what I truly believed. But
exactly.
like I
But
said,
you
it was
yourself
something
said,
that I
but
just
you
put on
yourself
the
said
table.
maybe I
Why
didn't
do you
use the right word. You said.
Why do you
maybe I
spend
didn't
time
use the
saying
right
Because
word.
it
things
became
you don't
clear to me that
believe?
you guys had no idea what I was talking about.
And if everybody's confused
And
by
it-
it,
Which
it's
is why I
probably-
chose a new word.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should be a little bit more careful of that. We
But
could have
I was
avoided the
careful
whole
because
last 30
as
minutes.
soon as I understood the disconnect, I tried to fix it. And I'll try to be more cognizant of the future.
Well, the thing is, that disconnect actually has a real property. It's not just a word.
It's been happening
There is
all
a
the time.
big difference between colonization, occupation, and again.
Okay.
And those things matter. And again, it matters. You can't.
Well,
Okay.
That goes back to what
I'm-
I was saying though, in terms of the possibility of a mistranslation and the cause that could have. You know, you
But-
don't know. I mean, it's hard to say why they censored it. It's clear that for some reason or another.
But it's
was
it's
censored.
ironic.
Very critical of China
It's
and their relationship with us. So
Oh yeah, that's why
one of the-
though everything that you buy is going to go up because of the tariff war.
It is, however, very ironic to me, and I don't mean this as an offense, okay? It is very ironic to me that you were able to recognize the importance of the accuracy of your words when you're explaining something when you are such an avid supporter of this guy, because he is the most.
Okay, well, I think that it's easy. You know, Bush wasn't very coherent
Eloquent?
eloquent all the time. Barack Obama, yeah, he was.
Super
Oh, okay, you
eloquent.
can't
Yeah,
get
but
him in
that's
that
not.
case.
Yeah, but that's not the only
That wasn't
qualification of being a leader.
But it's important.
It's-
It's very important, isn't it?
important to
Is it
be
or
what
not?
you
Is it
say.
or not?
It's-
I'm not gonna, you know,
And words are important.
You're-
What you say.
your arguments don't fall apart because of this.
Yeah.
I just want you to
I'm-
recognize it.
But communication takes two, right?
Yes.
Communication takes two or more. So just as
Absolutely.
much as it's my responsibility to make sure I choose the absolute correct words to explain my opinion, it's also your understanding and your responsibility to try to understand
To be open.
that maybe there's
Yes.
more to it.
Yes.
In the context
absolutely.
that they provided
Yes.
too. I mean, I see people all the time taking one statement and taking it to the most extreme
Yes.
possible realm, and everyone's hyperventilating, and we get books like Fire and Fury, and it's everybody calm down, realize he's not the most eloquent person ever, but he's his tremendous success in
Right.
his fields up until now, and he continues to.
But that standard's held like both ways. That standard's held both ways because he's also the one that's criticizing. Oh, the media said this about me. Well,
When you're born on third base and you get to home, it's not the same as hitting a home run.
yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, when you start out from a family like he did, you don't have a perspective of what that the real world is. You know, I mean, I don't know if you've ever experienced people that have grown up in that kind of wealth. You know, it's incredible. Like his perspective is so flawed. You look at a lot of his beliefs and how they're arranged, and it has nothing to do with reality.
I mean, I feel like how his ideas are portrayed as just this buffoon who has no plan for 15 minutes ahead of what he's saying is just
I don't believe that
alarmist,
that's
and
I
I don't think that's what's actually
I don't
happening.
believe that that's a
I don't think that
portrayal,
he's
though.
getting. I don't think
Yeah.
he's getting the
We're-
credit that he deserves.
We're going off
So
of
you-
what
you
we
think
see.
that
I don't believe that that's
Chiefs
a portrayal.
like that our generals are gonna lie about that sort of thing.
I never said that. And
So then okay, but
never-
I'm saying like so an entire Security Council has made specific comments about their ability to retain his attention. And for the ability for him to stay on track, they had to start using pictures because he couldn't pay attention
I'm
if
sure
it was all
Barack
written
Obama
down.
never needed a visual aid.
I'm.
What is,
they never
what does
reported
Obama
on
have
What
to
is,
do
wait,
with
why
it?
do we do a what
Then
about
why is he
it?
bringing it up?
Why do we
Who
do a what
brought up
about it?
Obama?
Talk
He's
about
bringing up
things like
visual
his
aids.
tariffs. We talk about the effect of his tariffs. We're not going to know the effects of his tariffs until we renegotiate our trade agreements.
Which is the
Because
whole
if
reason he
they
put him on the
cost
table.
us billions of dollars and we end up with a better position, long term we win. And I
But
don't care about the
It's a
discomfort in
going
between.
concern. Like you have to look at the short term and the long term in.
in the meantime, a lot of
connection.
people are being affected.
Yeah, and you look at. I mean, look, prices for just about every kind of consumer good are gonna go up. And
Steel goes up a few cents.
a few cents.
Yes.
25%. If you're building a building, how much do you think that's going to be? You think 25 cents is going to be the difference when I'm building a building downtown?
That
That's
doesn't
some-
affect people day to day.
Oh, really?
Oh,
All of
no?
those workers?
Wow.
All of that company that hired
I'm
all of those
surprised.
people?
I have high
All the people that are
expectations
going to
for you.
then buy that apartment or buy that corporate space that have now been charged more? You're saying that it would have no effect in the...
Well, I
mean,
do
economics
fail
is
to
what
see
I
how
know.
This relates to the book
Yeah, I
you
was
published
about
in
to say
China.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I already made my points.
Yeah,
I
so did
really, I think, okay, these are firsthand accounts. It's about him.
He said.
Okay, well, it's about him. So possibly they just don't want anything about him out there because he's not a positive influence to them. They don't like him.
Well, let's look at this philosophically and politically. What are the benefits? What are the benefits? What are the reasonings that the people of China have chosen to run the country, the elites or whomever, have chosen to run the country in the way that they have? Is it working for them? And if it is working, is it bad?
I don't know.
It's only bad if we compare it to ourselves and what we think is right, but is it working for us?
But what
I
are their
think-
indexes of approval for their leaders at the moment? And are they accurate anyway?
I think that's a really good question. I think that there's probably statistics out there and studies that have shown.
But are they allowed to record
And
that
are we
accurately?
considering these
though?
trustworthy?
I
Well,
don't
that's
think.
what I'm-
I think you're referring more to like communistic countries, and China's not really there like North Korea
Oh,
is.
so, okay,
Well,
so
it's not like North Korea,
economically,
it's
they're not communist
not
anymore.
to the extent of North Korea.
Socially speaking, I think yes.
But
that's
can we
No.
really make a genuine, factual, this is how things are and this is the way things are?
Yes,
without
we can
actually
factually
being
say
there?
that they
Yeah,
have
I could-
re-education
Yes,
centers
otherwise
for
we're
dissidents.
gonna fall into
Well,
like
you
nothing
totally
is.
cut me off, so I wasn't able to finish my thought. So what you just said was completely irrelevant to what I was going to say.
You asked the
If
question.
you were
and
asking-
I
answered
hadn't
it.
even finished asking the question.
Okay, sorry.
Now I don't remember my question.
It was
Must have
something.
been a good
it was
question.
something. It was something regarding how can us sitting here
And
make
thank you so much.
statements-
And just like we were talking about, how can people in Oregon know what it's possibly like to grow up in Memphis, Tennessee, as a black or a white person? How do we know what it's like living in China if we've never been there?
there are certain things that are facts. So this is
Yes.
a table. It's not a cantaloupe.
Mhm.
China does not have the same political liberalism, not as in left or right, but as in pertaining to liberty, that America holds.
But is that necessarily bad? And that's exactly
Yes,
what
exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
let me see. You're asking the question.
Do you
You're
know what
asking the
let's
question.
all sit here and
Can I-
make sure we understand what
can I-
ethnocentrism is.
Okay,
Can
but
I finish
can you answer
quickly?
the question?
What is ethnocentrism?
No. The question that you answered just now.
Can I tell you why I
asked
think
it.
it's
Can you
bad?
answer?
No,
Can
I don't
we-
think we can have a good opinion of something we don't know anything about.
You know,
Yes,
I
yes,
think
but
we
there are
know
still certain
things
things that
about
just
China.
are.
Hey,
There's
guys,
still things
we
that just
know
But
truly
you
are.
know
I
things
think
about
Theodore
the
wants
South,
to
but you
have
don't
something to
really
say.
know them. You don't understand it in a way
Yes.
that they do.
But
Sure, but I
there-
understand
I
the
don't have
idea.
to understand somebody to say that putting somebody in a re-education center is wrong.
But why do you keep harping? Okay, we get it.
Because
Okay.
that
Since
is the
millions of-
expression of taking away your personal freedom.
But what about
That
all
is
of-
taking
what
away
about-
your ability to
What
think.
about our shit
How about
education
asylum
system?
seekers?
Do you want to talk about that?
This is
Do you want to
unrelated
talk
to
about
one
the
another.
fact that we're
Shit
taking people out, that we
What
have
if-
kids in concentration
but
camps?
may I-
Well,
How
that's-
can you compare
that's
China's
different.
flaws to our flaws?
let me
ask
Dave?
you,
There's
but-
no such thing as perfection in
But
a
let me
country.
let me
Yes.
ask you something.
And
Let me ask-
you're harping on this little tiny thing.
But-
A
When
little
you're
tiny thing.
you're
You're
not-
talking about people's lives
you're
being
not
destroyed.
saying the forest.
Guys, but let me
But-
ask you something. You're speaking in a way that makes it sound like all Chinese people love their system.
There's no such thing as an absolute.
Okay, but
That's an episode.
what do you believe?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, no, it's scientific fact, which is different.
Okay,
When
we're
you- okay,
having a political debate.
Okay, but
What about absolute?
Leave science out of it.
what, do you think?
Leave
mo-
all logic out
do
the
you
door.
believe? Do you personally believe that most people in China are happy with their
I
system?
don't know.
40
I'm
cents a
putting
week.
the idea on the table. I
And
don't
we're
know.
presenting you with evidence to the contrary,
But you're
which
acting
you're
like you know
refusing.
exactly what
You
you're
asked a
talking
question.
about.
I
I mean,
do.
that's,
Okay,
that's
fair.
documented. I mean, the re-education program. That I mean, there are re-education camps. That I mean, that's very well documented.
And
There's no-
we're talking.
there's no question about.
So the
about
and their
whole
treatment
system
of
is a
Tibet.
flaw. The
Religion.
whole
No, no,
system
no,
is
no,
a
no,
flaw
no.
because of the re-education.
So that's like a. I mean,
I'm
that's a
asking you, is the
hyperbole.
whole system a flaw because of the re-education system?
No, that,
The
that's
whole
not the
system
only
is a
thing.
flaw because they are actively preventing change to the system to maintain power. Yes,
That is true.
That
That
is
is true.
fundamentally
But what about
why
our
that
news
exists.
system? What about our news system where we all just nod and agree to the talking heads who spit back political agenda?
I'm sorry.
Well,
Fake news.
I
It's
don't
the same
agree.
thing.
But we
I
have
mean,
the
that
power
doesn't
to
apply
change
to
it. They
A few
don't.
people here at least.
Do we have the power to change it? Do we have
Yes,
the power to
yes,
change
so I
CNN
believe
and Fox
so.
News? No, because we're a part of it.
No, I believe we do have the power to
No,
change.
do
we
you
have,
watch news every single day? Do you just
Just
kind of
because
bitch
we're
and
go-
moan about what you're told to
just
bitch and moan
because
about?
just because we're going through this rough patch right now, it doesn't mean we are unable to change.
I think
believe
you
that
might be more. I think Americans are more sheeps than they realize.
And I'm
Maybe.
just gonna say that I don't agree with your statement on us all just swallowing the things that are fed to us, because you've had my side of the spectrum complaining about the standard for journalism following for as long as I could remember. I can't remember a time before thinking that the news is kind of exaggerating and this sensationalizing things just to get more people viewing. And I felt that way ever since I understood the difference between a 24-hour news network and the local news.
Well, you're kind of like in the same genre, but not really in the same book that we were talking about.
Well,
That's
but-
not really relevant.
You guys, maybe
Bring it.
the answer isn't reading it.
Isn't reading it?
Is in reading it. He just asked, why hasn't it been published? He just told us we're going to be following this book. And as far as I know, none of us have read it, or have you?
Maybe they're struggling to figure out whether they should put it next to Harry Potter or not.
Maybe, but maybe that's why Professor wants us to read it. Maybe we'll find the answer.
To celebrate our freedom?
We shall see, I guess.
Oh, that was nice. Good job.
Yeah.
Miguel, that was very insightful.
I can be like that sometimes.
It's coming and drop truth bombs.
Well. What do you think, Professor?
What I don't understand is how is this book still even relevant? I mean, look at the back cover. How are there's 5 people, 6 people in this picture. 4 of them are no longer part of that administration.
Because he fired them.
Because he
Or they resigned.
fired them.
Because it's
Yes,
fire
but-
and fury.
He got in there. He's moved his agenda forward. Now we're trying to move our agenda forward as well. You can't all agree that China is the same. You all stop talking and debating because you came up with an answer that thought that China is fine, it's good, it's whatever it is. But you all
No.
stop. The fire is inside of you.
Are you trying to get us to fight?
No, I'm trying to get you to find the answers that are in your hearts, that are in your feelings to help society move forward.
A very old saying, I think it comes from a very old book that I don't want to say the name of. Like, the heart is the most deceiving thing of all things. So,
There's a difference between emotion and
I don't know.
intuition.
I know,
There's
intuition
a difference
is
between
wrong.
emotion and intellect. I know which one I care about.
Yeah, I would rather go with
But
the
that's not what
intellect.
you're talking
But
about.
someone else's fact
Emotion, I don't know.
is someone else's untruth.
Well, I don't agree with
There are
that.
things that are incontrovertible.
No, there are definitely
But-
things that have
This
been
is a very
sustained
long
by proof.
philosophical debate with
Yeah.
the answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you can also look at someone's way of civilization. You may not agree with it, but it could be standard tradition that has been going on for years and years and years. America is how old? And we have all the answers in over 250 years?
No.
So what did China get right, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
Well, they've changed. I mean, they've had different emperors with different ideologies throughout.
Not allowing this book in
I
our
mean,
country.
just look at how long
The book
China's
is in
been
the
around.
country.
I mean,
It has been translated. It has
Really?
not
Been.
been released to their public. What reason do you think that is? What are they trying to hide?
I think it pertains mostly to their access to freedom of the press, to their free speech. There is a lack of political liberalism. Like I said, not as in left or right, but as in the definition of political liberalism, the idea of democracy and having a voted a Congress or a Duma or a Reichstag or whatever you want to call it, that is just not being reflected in China.
In that way, I can relate to something you were saying. So, and that's also why I want to know if there is a reliable way to know how people in China actually feel about it. Because there is a chance that maybe they feel very proud about the fact that they don't have the liberties we have.
I think that's
There is a chance that they feel like, we've been around for thousands of years and this is the better way to run things.
The
It is
People's
possible.
Republic of China is very different than the China that has been around for thousands.
Yes, but it's a result of it. And
Yet,
I'm just putting out the possibility. It's possible that maybe they have figured out that some people shouldn't have the liberty to do this and this and that. I know this sounds awful, like I'm gonna go to jail or
Yeah,
something.
that
But
kinda-
yes, it does.
Although-
It's
Everything I feared
it's,
from the
but
left.
it's possible. I mean, is it wrong to ask this?
No,
But-
it's not. That's what educated people do.
this is true, but is it also true that Western civilization is slowly creeping in to a country that you never, ever would have thought would have this? Look at Richard Nixon. He came in and opened some doors into China. Look, you have the NBA in China as we speak.
Do you think that China secretly wants to take over the world?
Yes.
Why?
Secret.
Just like
What if
convince everybody, you guys, we've been around, we know how to run
I
things.
actually
Frank-
wrote a
frankly-
15-page paper on this in an undergraduate class I took on world history, China and United States economics and interrelations. The world is no longer run by military strength and power. It's run by financial strength, by your GDP, and we rely on each other. We do, and we can't escape that anymore. We are more interconnected than we've ever been, and it will not go away.
But do you think the people can sway?
People can sway what?
government.
It's also possible that
Ways of living.
it's
We can
it's
here in
also possi-
America because we have a democracy, an electoral system. We don't have a president for life like they do in China.
Well,
As much as I'd be okay with that.
But it's a
Regardless
question.
of that, revolutions occur.
But it's possible that we're just going through cycles. I mean, there's a cycle where we want this type of leadership. There's another cycle in which we really crave our liberty. There's another cycle where, like, okay, we've gotten a little too far from that.
Progress is
Possible.
progress is a lot like a river, like a winding river. It's not just due east and west. It goes north and south. We had 8 years of Bush, followed by 8 years of Obama, followed by hopefully 8 years of Trump.
Yeah, but
And I'm sorry,
Maybe
but
that's the best
it's
thing
just-
about our country. Maybe it's the fact that we go
Thank
back
you.
and forth.
Exactly
Maybe,
my point.
Maybe.
My point is, yeah, we're gonna go through cycles of what's the issue of our time and what's the issue on the back burner.
But it's also dangerous because when you go back and forth from an anti-this to an anti-that, is when you get an anti-Obama later, you get an anti-Trump, it's going to get even more extreme.
So-
And that goes back to the fear that I had before.
So using your river analogy, you have to. What was that?
I'm sorry, what?
Some of the parts of like the facts of a river don't change no matter what course it takes. Gravity controls; it always goes downhill.
Yeah, but they erode, they change paths.
No.
Let me
hear
ask
out.
you
So-
this.
It's just a metaphor.
Let me ask you this. This book right here, how much do you think this book, if it were released to the Chinese, would it affect women one way and men in the other?
Why would you ask that question?
Open for debate.
Okay.
I don't know.
Professor
I haven't read it
Miyagi
yet.
here.
Well, this is exactly why we need to dive into this book. Because as we see our current president, men react quite a bit differently than women do to him. Would you say the same might happen in a different country altogether?
He won white women over 45.
Christian white women that are ruled in a certain way sometimes. Correct?
I would agree that there's religious institutions that don't always further the civil rights of women.
But would you say in the 50s, women had their place? And then we travel a good 68 years later, and women necessarily have much, much more freedom.
Well, I would say a lot of that was originated out of World War II, where
men
so
went
many
away.
people died. Yeah, and so the women had no option but to step up and enter the workforce, and they were single mothers, and I think that created the whole origin of that system of the female empowerment as it stands today, and it's been a process throughout. But I see a lot of that story originating in World War II, even though, the still domestic housewife concept was alive and well in the 50s, but it shifted more and more the more that those kids that were raised by those parents and stuff, they were empowered by what they saw, and it's continued on and on.
A valid point. But yet again, knowing the man and not reading the book yet, but you will, knowing the man, how do you think this would affect men and women?
In China, I don't think it would have as big of effect as we all might think, because I agree. I don't think China hold with you when you say that. I don't think China is holding what is America doing, what are Americans thinking in as high as regard as we do. I think that one of the reasons this book is not published and readily available in bookstores out there is partially because they know there's not as much of a market. Not as many people in China are
Well,
upset.
just the idea that someone can be in so intimately with the ruler of a country and then go and report all of the happenings within these closed doors is probably not a great concept.
Yeah,
that
but a
they
lot
would
of these
like.
reportings were also from the sources that he used in this
But
book
just the
categorically denied.
Right, but just the concept is all I'm saying. To China, the concept of someone being able to come in and tell secrets about the administration is probably not something that they like to spread
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's not welcome.
to the
them,
people
so.
that live there,
Yeah.
right?
That's
because
a very good point.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even think about that. The fact that the close access to the president and allowing a dissenting view of the political leader, and how that might have a trickle down effect. Yeah.
And you have to think about the poor working conditions for a lot of the poor people in China. There's huge class differences there that just has always been a significant problem for them financially. So there's definitely that to consider. The pollution there is a big problem, so which is why they are technical innovators, because they have to be. So yeah, I mean, they're not a perfect country. I'm not aware of women being as held back as, like, say, in a Muslim country. But I do know that they have extreme working hours that we don't have the luxury of not experiencing in the United States. So there is a lot of definite flaws in their system of running things that maybe they don't want to rock the boat too much.
Well, it's that fear too. You know, I mean, it's like you can disappear there. Like that doesn't really happen in this
Isn't the
country.
suicide rate there, like, really high?
I
don't
think you're
know.
thinking of Japan.
Japan, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
They got their own issues.
I'm aware that there's that famous headline. I can't speak to how true it is. It's purely anecdotal, but the idea that there are nets outside the iPhone factories for when the workers jump out the window. There's definitely a different standard of living on the other side of the world, and I definitely concede to you that I'm not the authority on that. If the system's working for enough people enough of the time, that's fine. That doesn't mean that I can't have fundamental disagreements with things like presidents for life or Muslim internment camps and things like that are happening in China.
Muslim internment camp.
Millions of Muslims in China are being put into camps and forced re-education. Things like making them sing communist propaganda songs, forcing them to drink liquor, which is against the tenets of Islam, forcing them to eat
But
pork.
isn't that what Republicans want to do here, essentially? Is kind of say, this is our country. This is how we live things. This is how
I
we
believe
do
in
things."
personal liberty.
Yeah,
So,
I think
as a
that's the
Republican,
dramatization.
Do you believe in abortion?
Dramatization.
I
of
believe
it.
that if somebody wants to make that decision, that's their decision to make. I'm not going to make a blanket statement and
So
say.
you're pro-choice. It's interesting.
I would say that's a
You
way
might
to
have some
frame it.
political questions you want to ask yourself before you start labeling.
No, but
I mean,
But
I said I'm a
maybe that's just the
libertarian,
way
not
that-
a Republican.
Oh, okay.
But maybe that's just the way the media that we have sometimes just access to likes to portray it, but that's not the
Yeah.
reality.
Portray what?
You know, the general view of the conservative side of.
There's
I
this
think that, like, it's
cartoon.
extremism.
There's this cartoon of.
There's pockets in both sides, and the problem is this concept of this is the definition of again, like going back to what I said a long time ago. It's all fucking spectrum. It's all along a spectrum, no matter what. Even whether it's politics, whether it's belief in economic liberty or conservatism, whether it's big government or small government in terms of authority, whether or economic as well. So it's hard when like it's like, oh well, you are liberal or you are conservative, but it's not taking into account that everyone has a nuance to their position. Everyone
Exactly.
has a different ideology that they subscribe to, and we don't really foster those platforms as well. It's basically You're either this or that, or you're not either.
One of my favorite news outlets put it very well. I'm a millennial. I don't like labels. I'm sorry. I vote Republican sometimes. I voted Democrat sometimes. I see the candidates for who they are, not what party they are. Does the Republican Party perfectly represent every one of my beliefs? No. That's not going to stop me from voting for a Republican, where on the other hand, this is the liberals' biggest downfall. I'm the most progressive person. This candidate isn't progressive enough on this one issue, so
Yes.
we're going to have so much infighting that we can't, that the second least popular candidate can't win an election against the most least popular.
Yes.
Do you
Most
think that the
cases.
Chinese people want to read Fire and Fury? Do you feel like
No.
they're missing out on something?
No,
Do you feel like they're being held back from their government?
I don't
I
know.
think they're being held,
Held back.
but I'm
Yeah.
not sure that they care about this book.
And frankly, I'm glad
they
they
don't
do.
think that they're the likelihood that there's like great. I mean, I have not heard one bit of like we're pissed that we haven't gotten Fire and Fury. Like I haven't, there's no.
They might not even be pissed that their government is protecting their way of living through certain censorship programs.
They're
Yeah,
so
I mean,
Maybe,
there's-
maybe,
China
but
has a resistance movement. You might want to look into it.
yeah.
Because no, not every
There's a
Chinese
problem they have
citizen
in Hong
is
Kong, too.
perfectly
There's
happy with their
there's
government.
I didn't
1 billion
say
there's
that. I
1
didn't
billion
say
people in
that.
China. We can't expect a seventh of the world's
There-
population
there's
to
also
agree
the
on
problem they have in
everything.
Hong Kong.
No,
What's
but
that?
a large percentage of their population
Domination
doesn't
over
agree
Hong Kong,
with
how
their
they wanna,
treatment
like,
of Tibet.
I've been trying to.
A large
take it
percentage
into-
of their
Who has domination
population
in Hong Kong?
doesn't
China.
agree with a lot of things that they do.
I think there's traditionalists in every country who like the way things are and they're willing to fight for it. And I think it would be short-sighted to think that there's not traditionalists in China.
Kind
Yeah,
of gets
and
me
back
back
to
to
what-
my thing about just I hate to keep using the same metaphor, but with rivers, how it's just a current. It's something that you can't fight. It's the tide of time. It's people who are traditionalists and oppose change don't necessarily realize how fundamentally necessary change is an aspect of every part of life on this planet.
Speaking of time, I thank you for unlocking some of the wisdom that has come out today. Your homework today, as we have all discovered, is to dive into Fire and Fury. I don't think there's any problem diving into Catherine de' Medici, Renaissance Queen of France. So I thank you for pouring your hearts and your souls out to a wonderful first day of class. Your minds may change as we continue. You are dismissed.